Anybody who's not familiar with SonarWorks, it's a great room correction software. It's also a great headphone correction software. The beauty of SonarWorks for me is I felt, number one, it sped up my workflow. When I first tried it, I instantly heard the difference. You really don't know what you're listening to unless you start on a flat surface. A painter doesn't start to paint and know what colors he's gonna use unless he has a flat canvas. A key thing, like I said, is with the headphones. Like that whole mixing on headphones, nah, don't do it. You know, until I got this, and that's like, I'm sitting there for hours with headphones on my head and take them off, listen to how it sounds, and I'm like, whoa.
All right, everybody's there? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm not even know if I'm sharing or not. All right, I'm gonna put everybody in the. Why now? I'm trying to put everybody in the on the screen here. Am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay, so how do I stop sharing? I love an app that basically when you click something, everything changes. Stop share. Great. All right. Hello, everyone. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. This is really exciting for us. This is the first time we do a music expo online. So I apologize if in advance if that looks like it's the first time we do it. Some of us it's not, but for me it's the first time. But what's exciting is I have the same chills and emotions and excitement as a real physical music expo. I want to thank everybody today, speakers, the sponsors, and also all the attendees. It looks like we have about 57 online. And really, I wanted to ask everybody a quick question. And let me see if this can display on your screen. All right. I'd love to know, it looks like we had a lot of people joining from all around the world, and who has been at Music Expo before, if that's your first time, or if you've been to an actual event before. So we'll run this poll for about 30 seconds, but I'd love to hear. Really cool. Very cool. So a lot of you, it's the first time, but I know about a few of you have attended a music expo before. So thanks for joining us again. And yeah, this is great. I see Mark Knight. This is great. Yeah, would love to hear where you're from. So please, in the chat room, if you see the chat window, please say hello and tell us from what country you are from or what city. That would be great. And I'll start myself. Hi, I'm in San Francisco. Great. That's great. So about 60% is your first time. So welcome. I hope you're going to enjoy this event, and everybody else, you know the drill. What Music Expo is about, and this is why doing an online version is kind of special for us. It's really about the proximity and how up close and how low key the event is. We're going to have 4 or 5 very skilled and talented presenters today, but also what demarks them from a lot of other presenters is they are extremely approachable and open to answer any of your questions. So there is a Q&A, except if Il Factor will basically saying no, but there's a Q&A app, and this is really what we're going to use. Anyone in the Q&A app can ask questions. And we have Maria here in the middle of the screen. Maria, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Maria will be reading your questions to the presenters. So this is, again, a way for us to kind of channel the questions, but feel free to ask any questions that you have for Il Factor, for Greg, for Frank, or for Blake later today. this is the idea, is to try to streamline it as soon as much as possible. Also, we partner with SonarWorks, which I don't know if you know this company, but they make really cool measurement software for headphones and speakers. And Frank, during sessions, going to touch base a bit. But throughout the course of this event, we're going to give away 5 copies of SonarWorks headphones edition. So make sure you stick around. We're going to give them throughout the course of the event, and of course at the end when we have a giveaway session. I don't know if that's something you can do or we can do, but I would have loved maybe to see all of you. I don't know if you can share your camera, but if you can't, use the chat to say hello if you just join us. And without further ado, I want to pass it to, I want to do one more thing. Anna, we're doing already one giveaway.
Yeah, go.
All right, so before we start with Il Factor, I want everybody to go to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram and follow Music Expo SF. Okay, so Instagram and Twitter, and follow Music Expo SF for a chance to win one of the first copy. And we will pick, sorry, I meant edition. And we'll pick a winner during El Factor's first session, okay? And if you have any question, just ask here. But yeah, go to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram and follow Music Expo SF. I don't have social media, Kevin. There's other chances for you. I think, Kevin, you're already a winner. All right, great. But anyone else, please follow. Should we give one to Kevin? Thumbs up.
Yeah, he's taking social distancing to a whole nother level. He's like social media distancing as well.
All right. Anna, save his name if you don't mind. And then we'll monitor who has added, basically has followed any of our social accounts. And we will randomly pick someone. Okay. Cool, Adam. Great. Thank you so much, Adam. Yeah, awesome. Mike KG. Okay, so Il Factor, your turn. Take it from here.
And that's how I was able to save that panda from drowning. So did you guys get all of that? Yes? No? Well, thank you everybody for joining. I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks, Loic. Thanks everybody from Music Expo for putting this on. Super excited to be here. This is something special. This is like the first time we're doing like this online vibe. So I'm really, really excited about that. Once again, if you can hear me and see me okay in this, would you please just let me know? You could type in the chat why. If this is your first time attending a Music Expo, would you just put the number 1 and type that in? That'd be really cool for us to just say hello. So here's I also have on board, I'm going to be showcasing a project, a track that I produce alongside amazing talented artist Jared Evan, who's here as well. And what I wanted to do was, this was total last minute. Hit up Jared, say, why don't you come on since we're doing this online? And I think what's really important here is I think what can happen is when you see someone just break down a session, you miss a lot of the magic of behind the scenes of what happened and the thought process, and more so the why of the decision making. Like, why did you decide to go and arrange it that way? Or why did you why use that plugin, or why use this, and how did you do all these things? And I think sometimes going, from, hey, this is what I did to get this sound would be great, but a big missing component is the thought process, the you know, the behind the scenes magic. So a lot of that is captured between the producer and the artist. So I'm really thankful Jared was able to take time from his busy day. He was crocheting today, guys. He usually crochets on Saturdays. So thank you for that, Jared. It was really cool of you to jump on board. But there's a song called Ghost that we are going to highlight. So here's what I'd like everybody to do that's attending. What I'll do is I'm going to go through the session, give you a little bit of insight as to the thought process, the why behind what we're doing it, break down the session. And the cool thing about this is we're going to have an opportunity for you to just say, hey, wait a second, I really want to spotlight something. Can I ask you a question about that? And so I'm going to stop about 10 minutes in, 10 to 12 minutes in, and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So if you want to ask a question, particularly pertaining to what it is that I'm talking about or covering, please withhold any questions about, you know, food recipes or anything like that. That's for later on. But if you have any questions, hit the Q&A tab on the bottom of your Zoom call, and you can input your question there. And then we're going to have the lovely Maria moderate and just ask some of those questions during that time. All right. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I think let me let me share the screen. Well, I think before we even get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the relationship I have with the artist, because that's going to play a huge role into the decision-making process for a lot of things. So Jared, if you want, you can unmute. Can how you doing, Jared? Yeah, way to go. Way to be that guy. Can make sure you got your microphone. Text that. All right, well, Jared gets that up and going. Say something. Hello? All right. Just keep.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we got you.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. So thanks for coming on, man. Really excited about this. This was literally.
What else am I doing? I'm indoors. So.
Right. So Jared, you and I go way back to you first getting signed to Interscope. So there, Jared is someone who's experienced the full spectrum of someone with the hunger to being signed from an independent artist to a major recording artist. I mean, we went into Jimmy Iovine's house, you know, and got the deal. To then going back on the independent circuit. And I'm kind of giving a little bit of the backstory here. And this is going to pertain to a lot of the thing, because it's the relationship that you and I have developed from producer to artist, to really understanding, I kind of saying like, I know you, I kind of get the rhythm of how you do certain things, and that plays a role into my mindset. So just briefly, I mean, tell us about the journey, about, you know, becoming an artist, and what's important about finding someone that you can collaborate with that really kind of gets you as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey, and as you were saying, it's very important for you know, if you're not producing all of your music, you know, it's important to have a creative, collaborative person that you can trust, because when that other person who is helping produce you or sculpt you, or especially early on when you don't really know what your artist DNA is and you're still figuring things out and trialing and erroring, it's good to have someone who is around you enough at those times to like really understand you, because it's so important. It's so important to just, you can't, you know, and me, because I produce, so it's, you know, whenever people ask me, you know, send me some beats and send me beats for an artist, like I do it and it's cool and I have beats, but it's like, I kind of got to be with the artist and hear them talk, and, you know, just get to know them, where they're like, what their life's about. So all that stuff, it goes into the sonics of, okay, what's the story we're telling, and what's the vibe, you know? So yeah, I mean, having Ill for all of these, what is it, like, I think 10 years, maybe 09, I think that's when we met. So building with you since then, now it's like we're at the point where when we get in a room, it's like not even, it's just second nature. You kind of know where I want to go, because you know me like that, like as if you were just really close friends, but creatively, because we know each other like that, there's that trust of like, and don't get me wrong, there's been sessions where I don't know the producer, and we don't have that relationship, and the music, it doesn't come out. You can tell that there's a block there, you know? So yeah, I mean, it's been super important. And like you said, going from the major label machine, like early on when I was 18 years old, getting that big record deal, I would, 2 weeks before we got the deal, I was in my basement on my MacBook in GarageBand. Like, that's what got me the deal, was this record that I made in GarageBand on my internal microphone. I had never been in a booth before, never, professionally recorded. And then it's like, all of a sudden I'm going to Jimmy Iovine's house and we're being flown out to LA. And so it's wild. And obviously it's very enticing, especially again, when you're that young, you're that early in the game, but seeing where the game has gone and just what I've done and how things have shifted, you realize the most important thing is just knowing deep down, like, who you truly are, what you want to do, and just to do that. You know what I mean? Because you don't, if you get swayed in other directions, you can get lost. So it's good to, like Ill Factor said, having him there, having those people in your corner along the way, not even as a producer, just to like remind you, what it is you do best. You kind of put you back on the path. So yeah, I've been lucky to have seen it. I've been lucky to have seen the big flashing lights and like know that part of it and see it and be a priority with Jimmy at the label, but then also have all of that stripped away from me and then have to start over again. And like, but you know what? I wouldn't do it again. Like, I would do it just how I did it, because now it's like having that fan base and having that real cult like energy is way more important than like just coming with a radio record to impress a chairman of a label, So yeah, those are my 2 cents. If I could add any,
Oh, those are a couple quarters there, man. So that's good. All right, so Jared, I'm gonna ping back to you every now and then, but so let me go ahead and open up this session. I'm gonna play a little bit of this. You guys can let me know if you hear and see the screen okay. So can you guys see the screen, Maria? As long as you're okay, Maria, everything's fine. This is all about you today. All right, so let me start from the top. I'll play about the first verse and the chorus. And for those who are not familiar, I'm using Ableton Live 10. This is the DAW that I work in. And I'm going to walk a little bit of even tracking vocals, because believe it or not, I actually track vocals in my DAW straight into here, vocal comping and everything. And I know people look at me like, say, what? You crazy. But we'll talk about that later. So let's go ahead and play the record. This is called Ghost, featuring yours truly, Jared Evan.
Voices, they creep through the floor, yeah. I hear them talking camouflage. I don't know the sounds that chime and the words they cry. Oh, break me into peace of mind. They cut me open and turn off the light. Just go ahead and tell me what you find. It might be empty when you step inside. Oh, oh. All these ghosts, they hear and they haunt me. All they do is talk in my sleep while they taunt me. They keep coming back, all the memories call me. I won't let them take me again when I fall in. All these girls blissful, but now I'm sitting wistful. I guess that's why they say just be careful what you wish for. My memories, they burn hotter than a fucking disco. Trying to realign my mind and shoot it like a missile. Visceral, right? Yeah, I'm back in my bag. These rappers are mad. They lacking what I magically have. Emphatically, it's a catastrophe. But rather be bad. It don't matter what the fat is. I ain't switching back to that. Peace of mind.
All right, so love this record. It's so dope. It's really cool. So I'm gonna, like I said, rather than just highlighting a lot of the, hey, this is how we arrived here, I want to kind of give you a sneak peek of the thought process. So this all started with obviously Barrett flew down here into this very room here in my studio in Miami, and we were just talking. This is on the leg of his album that he's getting ready to release, and so this is listening to some of the music he's already created. So I'm listening to where he's at right now in this season of his life, soaking that in, and then interpreting that like, okay, and then also understanding like what direction does the artist want to go? Where does Jared want to go now? And But knowing him, this is why we highlighted this at the very beginning, knowing him and like knowing what he normally kind of gravitates to and putting my fingerprint on it, I kind of like know certain textures that kind of get him like, oh snap. So this all starts with this main riff here, this piano riff. So let me just highlight this and play that. This is the. So that was a riff that I literally just played. This is a Mellotron that I just loaded up so I'm using Contact. Can you see the plugin window here? Does it show, Maria? All right, good. I'm going to reference Maria for everything. Excuse me. So this is a basic Contact factory library preset, and it's got a lot of the Mellotron samples. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mellotron, it was just an iconic piece of gear in which it would have tapes just cycling, and almost it was like on sampling, right? It was introducing sampling, very prominent in Sgt. Pepper's album for the Beatles. As a matter of fact, that's what Jared calls this all the time when I use this. Like, oh, you're doing the Sgt. Pepper thing. I was like, yeah. So here's that riff that we're playing, and there's not a lot of tweaking other than just a little bit of sound design. And so sound design, I don't usually sit here and sound design to craft it. I kind of stumble across something and then sound design as I go. So here is the riff. So that's the riff that kind of got the ball rolling. And once I started moving in the direction, I got the okay once I knew Jared was like, yo, that's dope. You know, and was vibing with that. What was kind of running through your head, Jared, when I played this little thing here?
I mean, that was what I was looking for. I was kind of looking for that epic, haunting, daunting, dark kind of video game-ish thing. These are all things, by the way, that when me and Il are creating, and when I create with anyone, if they're producing, I'm giving them these little descriptive kind of Sgt. Pepper, Phil Spector, Stanley Kubrick. I kind of just say things that shoot those kind of images in my head, and that's what I was doing to Il. I was like, yo, I'm thinking of like some like 8-bit Zelda kind of, but like dark with like this and that. So as I'm saying that, he's kind of in real time, he's pulling up patches and he's starting to play. And as soon as he played that one, I was like, all right, boom, dude, loop that, now build off that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So got this looped. We have this here playing looped, and immediately and it was just actually what I like about the way I have my workflow in live is my workflow is necessarily not to be shackled to how the DAW works and follow that, but I love how the DAW follows my momentum. So as I'm actually playing the riff, as I do something here, I'll spotlight what I'm about to talk about here. I'll highlight this area here and loop this. But let's say I'm playing a riff just without having to hit the record button or anything like that. I can just, and I can hit this capture button located right here, and it'll capture that performance. And you see my whole project tempo just changed and everything. So it will adjust the project to the tempo of the riff that I just played without recording anything. And that's kind of what I did in light of that. So I'll undo that, go back to the regular tempo. So I like that because then I'm lost in the vibe rather than, okay, find out the tempo, find all that stuff there. So I was able to create that riff, narrow down the tempo that's 93, and then I went ahead and started working on the drums immediately after that. And so usually I'll come up with like a drum pattern, but I was just browsing through some already in my head. The minute that riff came down, I was like, I'm going for like some Beastie Boys Sabotage texture type drums, and that's where these guys came in.
Questlove in a way.
Yeah, like some dirty Questlove. And so here's that drum break. So just a little bit of EQing to take some of that low end off. And what's cool is Frank is actually going to be, so I passed the baton over to Frank to have him mix this project. So a lot of you're going to see the relationship between what I'm going through in the producing stage to handing it over to the mixing engineer to have him finally take this to the finish line. So I'm as I'm adjusting my drums, I'm doing this not in the sense of thinking, should I just let the mixing engineer do this? My thought process is, let me get this sounding a way that me and the artist vibe with. Because if we're not vibing with it, I'm not going to let the mixing engineer then say, hey, get it to a place where we're happy with it. No, it's like we vibe with it. Now we want you to kind of take it to level 10, right? So we got these drums, and then I layered those drums. And this is all while I've looped this. So I'm looping this riff, put the drums in, and Jared's already hitting the pen. He's already coming up with melodies and vibes here. So I'm going to layer the drum loop, which I oftentimes do. I'll layer a drum loop with another layer of a kick and snare. So this is a drum rack here, and I'm going to open it up in the session view. So this has just a kick, an extra snare. I think I have just a Pultec EQ just to give it some more bottom end, because what I wanted was the beat from the bottom end of the drum break to be more present. So I have the two sitting together. This is without the drum break's dope, but it's a little thin. Put this in, bring the bottom back in. So it's cool. So, so I'm actually working on that was it. It's nothing, not too crazy. Drums are in place. And I've got this little cool thing that comes in every now and then.
That's my favorite.
Now, yeah. So this by itself.
Mine too. That's my favorite too.
This by itself makes no sense. It's like the rhythm, the groove is so much different than what we're listening to. So it's like, how did I get here? How do I arrive to even putting this guy in there? Why is this here? Oftentimes while me and the artist are vibing off a loop, I start to integrate other things like percussion loops and stuff like that. So here I have a bunch of loops. Right, and then me and Jared are just dancing though. So I'll go through a bunch of loops that are texture-wise and even rhythmic-wise outside of the world that we're living in right now. So that's the loop right there. So in Ableton, I can now just bring that loop into the separate track here and kind of tweak around the loop. Change the timing of it, stretch it, deep pitch it. So I kind of tweak things around a little bit till I get a texture added to the groove. I don't want to take away from the rhythm that I'm building. I want to enhance it. So that's what this, that's cool. And then I'll add that with the other drums. Now here's without it. Put that loop again. And that's what really adds a cool human element to the drums. And I don't like robotic stiff drums. I implement these loops in there to create that vibe. And sometimes what I do is I'll put a gate on the loop so that the drums actually trigger it. So it follows the same rhythm as the other drums. But in this case, that worked out well. So it comes in every now and then. I don't know that. And then we move over to the bass. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions so far that you guys might have on what we've covered?
Hey, so this is Maria. So I'm going to read 3 questions that we have so far. First question from Federico. In Ableton Live, do you work mainly in arrangement view or in session view?
That's a great question. I usually always start in session view. Primarily 80% of the time I'm in session view. And for those who are not familiar with Ableton Live, session view is, well, let me actually share the screen here. I think I just did. Okay, there we go. Session view is the window in which this is the arrangement view, which is pretty much what a lot of people are used to in other DAWs. It's the linear point of view. But then here's a session view where you would not only balance and somewhat mix your project, but what makes this unique is that session view allows me to then treat this as a sketch pad where I'm throwing clips and ideas and I'm kind of just looping those around until we arrive at a vibe that we're like, me and the artist or myself are like, that's cool, now expand on that.
So basically, well, you can say that is like your canvas and then you're sort of arranging everything onto your session view.
Yeah, so if you see here, you have a couple clips here. This is how the project actually started. So here's the actual riff. These are different interpretations. So I'll just like that's nonsense. That's because I was just starting to come up with something as another idea, and then I arrived at, that's my idea right there. That's where I start. That's how the whole idea started in session view. And I stay here. And so think of it as a blank canvas, and I'm throwing paint to that canvas and seeing what ideas stick, which one works well. And then when I'm ready to commit to it, like then I might get like an 8-bar riff or an 8-bar loop or something like that. But then I'm working with Jared, and him and I are like, yo, that's a dope vibe. That's cool. And if we've captured the vibe, that's the most important element. If I've captured a really cool vibe or a chorus or a drop, something like that, then I can go ahead and hit the tab button and enter the arrangement window and just dump that in there and then expand on that and build my skeleton after that, which I'll get to later on. So session.
Yeah, that's super dope. So we have more questions coming in. What was the timbre of the mellotron before those effects? This is a question by Adam.
Okay. That's a great question. Here's the mellotron without any of those effects. So it's just, and there's a little bit of reverb on the, let me save all this fun. So this is dry. So it's loading this exact preset, not touching anything there. And I'm adding, now these effects that you see here, this is now, I didn't put this for the sake of, well, let me just put things on there to make it. It was great from the get-go. And then I actually added these effects to complement the overall balance of everything else. So I started adding the chorus because, man, it's like in the mix, I want the sound to be a little bit more wider. That's why the chorus is in. And I wanted more grit, so I put the saturator in there so it pops out in the mix more. Just a little bit of drive. And I balance it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Sounds good in the mix now. And then the filter was for automation purposes and to shave off some of the noise and air that's in that sample and to make it a little bit warmer, more vintage. So this is without it. So the filter really does a lot of the work, and you could use an EQ too, but that's my whole purpose with that. Sorry, I think I'm going the long way around the barn to these questions, but
that's great. And also because you're making mixing decisions, but those are production mixing decisions. Then obviously Frank is going to take it from there and then just.
Yeah, so it's crazy. Before, like artists would just play, record it in there, and then the mixing engineer is doing all these things now. And I'm kind of like wearing both hats. I'm producing it, but adding these spices on there because I'm trying to really get that sound to feel good. And for me, when I'm making records and I'm producing stuff, I'm like, the problem with so many things is like the problem that even me and Jared run into is like, dang, that demo sounds so dope. And the issue with demoitis and then tweaking is exactly that. I'm like, I have the issue of tweaking too much. So I'm like, I got to slap my hand a lot. I mean, like, yo, tweak this way. It's like, yo, what you just did ruined it. Why did you do that? I'm like, I don't know, because I overthought this. I thought having a compressor there or having a limiter on that is something you always do, and that's not the reality. I'm like, it sounded good, so there it is. And a lot of times you'll find tracks on here is like, you got nothing on there. It's like, because it freaking worked. It sounded good. So I'm not going to, if Jared was vibing with it, that's it. Leave it alone, and then just keep going. And then I'm using a lot of effects mostly for artistic, creative automation, because later on in the track you're going to see some really cool stuff with strings and vocal delays and things like that.
Cool. We've got one question for Jared. Did you always start with knowing what sounds you wanted? Right now I feel like I'm a little all over the place. Thanks. This is a Mick G question.
You know, early on when I first started making music, like when I was 16, 17, just messing around with, like I said, before I was using Logic, GarageBand, it was more of just what were my influences. That's where I started. Before I got to like, what sounds do I want? What drum sounds? Like, I know I love Wu-Tang and I love Coldplay and Radiohead and the Beatles and Jethro Tull. And it's just like, you just got to know, like, and this is something I've learned from Il through his webinars and things of that nature. He calls it the artist DNA, right? And it's essentially, I feel like knowing that first, and foremost, that's going to lead you to all the gateway of sounds and things. It's just start with what do you love musically, just as a fan. And like, what, you know, if you just hone in on your influences, and at first it's like, call it like mimicking. You're like kind of mimicking your idols and your heroes, but doing it over and over and over and over again, eventually you're just going to like fall into this natural place where like you kind of have a sound and you know what you like. And so I would say start there, and that will help you kind of understand, like, basically like the same with clothing and like your tastes and what you like. And, you know, it's the same with music, and you just got to know, you know, what your influences are. Once you hone in on that, I think you'll get a better perspective of like where you want to go. Like when you open a session, like, okay, what am I doing? I think you'll have a better sense. So for me, that's what it was. It was just knowing what my artist DNA was, you know. I can say confidently at this point in my career, my journey, like I could walk into a room with Ill and I know what we're doing. Like I know, because I know myself that well, he knows me that well. And again, it's just, it's most important for the artist himself, him or her, to know what their artist DNA is before diving into like what production sounds and chords and things do I want to do, you know? So.
Oh, now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
We have more questions, but let's move on, and then we'll do demands.
These are great questions, guys. Please keep them coming. Fill up Maria. We'll jump on another section there. So, so we've got the drums, we've got the riff in place. Let me just walk through a couple of the instrumentation that's here, and then I want to spend time going through the arrangement, because this is a little bit unorthodox the way we arrange this track. And then I want to talk about vocal production here. Since I have artists, I think this would be really cool. So we go from the drums to this bass riff, which I played live with a fake bass. So I love this plugin. I love using Moto-Bass. It's such a great plugin. We're a little behind with time, so I'm just not going to go through all the details, but it's cool. It gives you so much flexibility, changing the strings, the pickups, and everything like that. So I've got this little bass riff here that just felt good when I was thinking about, like, well, should I put an 808 bass? But the 808 takes it somewhere else. This brings it back to that gritty Wu-Tang vibe and that nice throwback hip hop that Jared and I love so much. So we've got the bass, the drums, and everything. And that's the pocket, that's the groove. I also duplicated, I Command D, duplicated the whole bass track. So you have 2 copies of that. But the second one is distorted. So on purpose, it's filtered out. All the low end is filtered out, so there's no low end. And I filter that out. Now, I didn't do that in the production side. I did that later after Jared and I wrote the record. This was more of like a post-mix kind of decision, because I wanted that bass to pop up a little bit in the mix, so I put that distorted version on there. All right, and then that's the verses. Those are the primary parts of the verse. Then we have this little, this choir stab is interesting. This is me looping myself. Remember this, Jared? This is me looping myself. So that's actually me just going. I use Ableton Live's looper. I'll showcase this right now, really quick. Looper. So the looper is a dope little tool. I don't really see a lot of people talk about or use, but it's basically like a loop pedal, and you could just do one performance, and then it just adds and adds and adds and adds and adds. So I actually plugged in my microphone into the looper and just did this ooh ah, and just layered it. Just kept layering it, and did this whole choir thing, pitched it up, and that's what this is. And I've used a little bit RC20 to add some stereo width and make it sound like a sample. And that's what we have going on. And that goes nicely as something to lift up the pre-chorus. Now let's walk through this section here. So let's just focus on the arrangement really quickly. The arrangement, we start off with a nice little intro here that introduces the riff. Then we break into our first verse. Then we have this pre-chorus section. And then we have this chorus, which then it becomes this other section. So it almost feels like a breakdown, so to speak. It's a breakdown / chorus. Then we go right into second verse, which is a rap. So Jared throws some crazy bars here. He has a second rap. Then we enter the second pre-chorus. And then we go to that chorus again. but then we don't ever go anywhere else. We vamp out into a whole nother section. So I usually don't kind of do this in a pop arrangement, but this is unique in the way we arranged it, because this was a journey that we felt was natural, right? So this was like a natural journey that we thought, oh, this would be dope, let's go here instead. We arrived there after Jared started coming up with this melody. He came up with this dope we have some of the versions here, but here's the melody he did for that pre-chorus. Yeah, that's it. Boop. That was all he did. That was the melody. And I was like, we need a little bit more.
Peace of mind. They cut me open and turn off the light. Just go ahead and tell me what you find. It might be empty when you step inside. All these ghosts stay here and they haunt me. All they do is talk in my sleep while they taunt me. They keep coming back, all the memories call me. I won't let them take me again when I fall in.
All right, so rather spending time and highlighting each of the elements, let's talk about some of the things that, because those are the elements that make that section, rather than just giving you each, hey, this is what I'm using, this is what I'm using here. I think what's more valuable, and you guys can let us know in the chat, is like thought process behind the arrangement. So that section there, the chorus, is a lot darker and haunting, and that's a theme, that's the concept, ghost. So I'll have Jared come in and talk a little bit about the concept and lyric stuff, but that took the track to a more serious and darker tone. And so then you have this bounce and that throwback hip hop. So we wanted the contrast between this section, and let me just mute the vocals a little bit. Not a little, you can't mute a little bit. So just. So this piano here, using addictive keys with this haunting upright, makes it really cool and spooky. And I love using Output's Arcade plugin to add texture and to kind of seam the gaps a little bit. So I'm using Arcade here, using this Nightmare line. It's got this really cool droney. And then we have this little chant. So all those elements are taking it to a mood. What I mean is, like, we're really moving along to how we painting this picture of this dark, haunting kind of thing, but still have energy in it, because it's easy to just go dark and not retain a lot of that energy in there. So so then we go back into the rap verse here in this section.
Wristful, but now I'm sitting wistful. I guess that's why they say just be careful.
So what makes it really distinction is the lack of drums. We don't have any drums there. We just have the pad, the drone, the keys, and a bass. The bass is different. We're not using the moto bass. We're using a synth bass, and this is an actual. This is an analog bass I have here. I'm pointing at it right there. It's the Novation Bass Station 2. Love the warmth and the sound of that machine, so I just tracked it in there. And then we go, I want to spend a little bit of time, if we have, to go to this section. This is where we introduce the chorus once again. So let's listen to what's happening here. Some really cool things, and we'll highlight that. And then we'll go through the vocal arrangement.
All these ghosts stay here and they haunt me. All they do is talk in my sleep while they taunt me. They keep coming back, all the memories call me. I won't let them take me again when I fall in. All these ghosts stay here and they haunt me. All they do is talk in my sleep while they taunt me. They keep coming back, all the memories call me. I won't let them take me again when I fall in. All these
So yeah, you can see how it just transitioned to this epic thing going on at the end. Now, Jared and I are huge Radiohead fans. So again, not only does he have his artist DNA, I also have my DNA as well when I produce and things that I like to do. This part, this whole epic out thing wasn't fully, materialized on the spot. I had the strings, and then because when we transitioned there, we both felt like, yeah, this would be cool. Go into like, just do your thing. And Jared was like, just go ahead and do your thing. So I spent some time walking through creating this nice orchestral part here. So I'm using strings from Spitfire Audio, using the Albion Tundra strings. They're nice and light, really. So we've got that string section there. Again, the flow here is the concept, like this ghost, these are haunting. And I was very inspired of that section about this artist called Woodkid. I'm a big fan of Woodkid, and he used a lot of orchestrations and his stuff. I was like, yeah, this would be cool if we made it epic and then have that Radiohead delayed vocal thing that we hear at the end. It'd be cool. And so that's how we mapped all that out. Oh wow, I know we're close with time. So so yeah, that's the arrangement. And I it's kind of hard to encapsulate all this in 45 minutes. So, and on the details, but the vocal arrangement, which is really cool. Let me just walk through a little bit of that. I think we have time. Do we have like 2 minutes to squeeze the vocal stuff in, Maria? Yes. Is Loic still here? I can't see the chat because. All right, I'm just gonna do it, and then you guys can.
Loic is telling us we have 10 more minutes.
You have 10 more minutes, Loic?
Go for it. Go for it.
All right. So I think the vocals are cool because a lot of people ask me, how do I do this? These are all tracked directly into Ableton Live. So Jared was literally standing right behind me. I love the vibe of tracking with the artist in the room. I've been in every scenario, but personally, this is just where I'm at right now, and it works really well. I create I group tracks where I can get all the lead vocals together, and I group them. And then as you can start to see here, we start layering, introducing other layers of vocals to help boost the vocals in different sections of the song. So we start the verses alone.
Voices, they creep through the floor.
So the verse vocal is alone. Then he's introduced to some doubles, just a basic hard pan left and right here as we get to this section here. And as we enter into the chorus section, then we introduce more to create fit the atmosphere of that moody, dark thing, because he's singing a whole nother phrase here.
Go stay here and they harm me. All they do is talk.
We're also introducing some weirdo over here. I think that's
Go stay here.
Come on now. That's me doing the lower octaves.
Go stay.
So I'll do the lower octaves, and added a cool texture with Jared on there. And then, so we have these nice little stacks happening with the vocals, and then we go right back to sucking it right back into one lead again. So you can see the pattern here. Verse, then start to layer more vocals, and then to layer more, and then right back to the verse with just one vocal here. And because we go to a rap, and then I introduce the same pattern here again. Now this could be different for every song, but in this one in particular, it felt right. And that's the theme throughout this whole thing. I mean, what's causing us to vibe with this the best? And so we went with that. And then I introduce vocoded vocals in that breakdown section here. So here are the vocoder.
Go stay here and they haunt me. All they do is talk.
And I'm using the vocal synth 2 that is being triggered with the MIDI track underneath that. I put that in there to create, because we're talking about ghosts, they keep on haunting me. I wanted some kind of haunting vocal to add texture to the vocals here.
Go stay here and they haunt me. All they do is talk in my sleep while they taunt me. They keep coming back, all the memories call me.
So that vocal there gives a nice texture to it. And then we run off to, and there's a lot of automation that happens to capture you know, I'm automating the delay, the reverb, I'm doing all this cool stuff because the reverb doesn't stay the same all the way through, because it's all about dynamics, like adding these dynamics throughout the production, all that. So yeah. Any questions? Anything you want to throw in? Any little things, Jared? And then we'll go to some questions here. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Man, no, I mean, it's really crazy for me to just see you break it down, because I haven't seen the session or heard it like this since we were together. So it's really cool. And yeah, like Il said, my only 2 cents left now is really just to say whatever feels right while making a record, even if it's a beat, but I guess more so a song, because the beat changes when you write to it. Just don't think of chasing a style or a format. Just whatever feels the best in your gut at the time is how the record should, you know, be sculpted. And that's my ending 2 cents for this.
Cool, man. Jared, dude, I was actually really excited that you were a part of this, because this is awesome having you here, like literally playing. All right, Maria, do we have any questions we can wrap up with?
We do. So we have 2 questions regarding that gate that you use on the drum loops. Basically, some people wonder why you use the gate instead of side chaining. Use side chain compression on the percussion.
Yeah, the reason why gate versus side chaining is because gate has a little bit more control for the rhythmic. Remember, it's going to open or close. It's going to go, and the compression really is just ducking it. It's pushing it down. So rather than the open and shut, this is more like volume down and up. And it's a different feel, different vibe. So side chaining will give you a pulsing vibe, while gate just gives you an open close vibe. And that's why I went with that instead. I use on that for what I just showed you, I use gate more so for that, and side chain maybe for basses and for pads and things to get more of a pulse.
We have another question regarding your drums. Can you show the drum rack MIDI writing, and how is it that you combine with samples?
So the drum MIDI. So here's the MIDI of the drum of the actual drums. That's these guys here. And if we focus that in with the drum loop, now some of these aren't going to be spot on. As you can see, the hi-hat is not on, and that's purpose because the drum break is not perfect. It's loose. Look at that hi-hat to where it's at from the beat. And so I don't like creating stiff drums, or it's bop, bop, that. So I love the drum break. It was loose. Someone played it. It was dope. And so I want to make sure that my program drums fit that same vibe as well. I don't know if that's what they're asking, but yeah.
Probably, it feels like. Question, have you tried using another DAW, or does Ableton interest you the most?
Ableton is the best, superior, far better than anything else. Everything else doesn't work. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'll use I use Logic. Well, in the spectrum of everything, I use it for the purpose of demonstrating how and sharing production principles. So I like Studio One, Logic, Reason, but Ableton is my weapon of choice. It's like I said, it's the workflow. So when I'm always everyday production and writing, it's Ableton. Sometimes I'll demonstrate production values on Logic and Studio One, so that those who do use those platforms can understand how to get those things done. But really, it doesn't even matter if you're using your phone, your neighbor's calculator. As long as you're producing great music on the other side of that laptop, that's really all that matters. So, yeah.
Another question, how do you label all the different tracks? Well, that's like a taste choice, an individual thing that we all have our OCD here and there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And typically in Ableton, when you drag an element into a track, it automatically labels it to that element. So you'll see here, smash D kick. That makes no sense, but that's the actual name of the file that's on that track. So sometimes I'm like, whatever, just give it a color. So
or sometimes, like, I feel like, for example, there's certain synths that in my mind, they sound like stars. So I'll just label it as stars or sprinkles or whatever.
Sprinkle Stars is the name of my first album, by the way.
It was your Britney Spears era. Moving on. Do you usually prefer to record vocals in Ableton versus Pro Tools?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, I used to track vocals in Pro Tools primarily. Even with Jared, we used to do all the stuff in Pro Tools. Once I did, and believe it or not, I think Jared was the first artist, not in this project, but way back. I was like, I'm going to try to just track vocals in live because I want to say that I can do it and try it. And once I developed my vocal comping system in live, which is, I have a whole video on my Beat Academy YouTube channel on that. I do more on that. Once I did that, I never looked back because tracking vocals in Ableton was so much easier and quicker for me that I just started completely doing it. So from here on out, if I can, I track vocals all in live. And sometimes what I'll do is bounce the 2-track. I'll bounce the whole 2-track and then record vocals on a separate session for the purpose of not allowing me to tweak the 2-track anymore because it's got to capture the vibe. And then I'll just, track vocals and import that later. The only problem I see with tracking vocals in the session is that I'm like, oh yeah, let me fiddle with this thing while he's doing this. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know why, but that thing sounds different. I'm like, unlimited undo. So yeah.
Yeah, that happens. Too much going on at the same time.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend on the production arrangement before sending it off to get mixed?
Jared, how long? We knocked this whole song out in like a couple of hours.
Yeah, it was fast. It was, I think, 5 hours we did this one. And then kind of just, I ended up getting demo-itis, right?
Mm.
So I was attached to the demo drums and how that was knocking. And then when Il sent me the mix back, I wasn't used to it. I was like, I don't know. But then I sat with that one for like 4 days and I was like, all right, you know what? And then I A-beat it with the one I had demo-itis to. I was like, you know what? You're right. This new one is better. It's just, so yeah, we did it very quickly. And then next thing I knew, I heard some versions and that was the marinating trial era. Every time a record is done with me, I always have that phase of like sitting with the demo, then hearing the new mix and then deciding between the two. And we actually did this one pretty fast. So yeah. Good.
Yeah. So the added production. So we wrote it, like you said, in a couple hours. He flew back to New York. I had to deal with life again. And I was just in the middle of like a couple other projects, jumped back on this and maybe added an extra couple, maybe 3 hours of adding a lot of the automation to his vocals and things like that, which was really cool. So yeah, that's what takes the most time. Like here. Oh wait, you're not, I'm like showing you this, but you can't see anything. Here you go. So yeah, the automating, like going in there, automating his vocal, doing all these cool automation stuff for the delays, to do all these cool little things. That's what takes the majority. All these little cool, crazy things.
Would you send a separate track to Frank for that?
Sorry. Yes, I export all the tracks individually when getting ready to mix, and I can do that by just selecting all the tracks, or in Ableton Live, you go to the command and choose all individual tracks, and it'll bounce every single track, including the sends and the return track outputs, as well as the master output for Frank to have a reference when mixing. And it just, bounces in about 6 minutes or so. So Loic's here. That means we're out of time. Or no? I don't know.
We can hear you, Loic. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Maria, is there any other questions?
I believe we have some questions on the chat. I was scrolling through. Guys, please remember to send your questions on the Q&A so we can track them. This sounds very much like songwriting and production collaboration, Eduardo asks. How do you handle songwriting and production credits?
I take all the credit. I tell Jared to go home and not even deal with it. No, it's good. I mean, again, because of the relationship we have with each other, we already know, like we've set that precedent at the very beginning. And for a lot of you watching, you might not have that kind of relationship with artists or, when other collaborators. So that is something that you need to really urgently stress at the very beginning. It doesn't have to be a weird conversation, but it should be a necessary one that you guys understand. Like, hey, how do you work out splits? how do you understand what collaboration means? Because what you think is fair isn't the same definition to other people and what they think is fair. They're like, yo, I added that syllable, I guess 70%. It's like, well, so Jared and I kind of always just work out, like, we're in this for the long game. We split things down the middle, and that's how it is. Because, you know, I'm inspired by his influences and what, huh?
I said Lennon McCartney.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're more Lennon, and I'm probably more McCartney. But you're always like, you're out there drinking plum. But anyways, but that's it. That's how you would deal with the split stuff. So I hope that makes sense.
So we are at time. I want to thank Il Factor, Jared, for joining us for this first session. Of course, Maria for moderating all the great questions. There were some really, really, really great questions. What we're going to do now, I think Il Factor is going to share the tracks with Frank, and Frank's going to tune in about 15-20 minutes to show you how he's going to mix, or how he's mixing those tracks. I want to invite our friend Greg Ondo. Greg, are you online now?
Can I give a quick shout out? Like ways that can we do a little shout out real quick before we introduce Greg?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. So guys, Jared, definitely follow him. Jared, how do they get a hold of you? Instagram, it's at Jared Evan Music, or what?
Yeah, a lot of people think it's Evans. It's just Evan. It's my middle name, Jared Evan. My first and middle names. It's just that all across the board. All social media is Jared Evan everywhere.
That's
cool. And then, yeah, so check him out. Hit him up on Spotify. He's got an album coming up featuring this song that we just walked through. It's going to be coming out pretty soon. I know in light of everything that's going on, we haven't solidified a date yet. But guys, also, I have a platform called Beat Academy that walk you through similarly what we just did, providing coaching calls, resources that can help you take your next step with your music production. Loic is going to give you a lot more information on how to plug in. I have a free gift for you guys. So thank you so much for being a part of this Music Expo. If you're interested in hitting me up and getting more information on how I can help you take your next step, definitely visit beatacademy.com. All right, Loic, it's all yours.
No, that's great. No, thank you so much. Yeah, Jared, do you mind dropping your Instagram, whatever social links you have in the chat here? Same thing for you, Il Factor. If you have any links, drop them here. We will send them as well. But that's great. Shout out. Really, really blessed and grateful to have you join us today. And actually, for full transparency, Jared, it was appearance today was a total surprise. It was a last minute thing. So really appreciate, Jared, that you joined us today.
I would be anywhere else in the world right now. Thank you.
And it sounds like a lot of people really dig the track. So let's make sure you follow Jared, you follow Il Factor, and Beat Academy is an incredible resource to help bring your production skills to the next level. Also, a big shout out to Il Factor. He has great disconstruction videos on YouTube. Maybe even if you can drop that link to YouTube channel, which is also super dope. So share all the links. And now, quickly, we're going to transition to Greg Ondo. Greg is here from Steinberg, is the master of Cubase, another wonderful, phenomenal DAW. And we asked him actually to give a quick product demo in the context of production, co-production using the tools. So Greg, to you from Washington, D.C.
All right, thanks, Loic. All right, I'll share my screen and make sure. And maybe if everyone could let me know if they could see my screen, maybe someone could chime in.
Yes.
All right, and okay, so one of the things that we run into, where you see people running into problems kind of initially starting their song, is we see a lot of people kind of, having difficulty with chords and making chord progressions work. So we have some kind of unique tools in Cubase, and everything I show you is, available in Cubase for Mac or PC. So when we take a look at this, we have a special chord track. So if I wanted to just kind of start off with an initial idea, maybe we'll start our songwriting process with a drum loop. I could load up a sound such as like a Hallian, like Sonic SE, one of the included instruments that comes with Cubase. And what I want to do is to literally just come here, and we could just drop a chord in, and I could double click to define what chord this is. So say I want it to start with an F chord, And if I wanted to come directly over here, let me just see if I have my sound loaded here quickly. Sorry about that. Let me just load up a different patch. Okay, so now if I wanted to kind of start off my progression, I could say, okay, we're going to go to an F chord. And let's say I want the next chord to be a B flat. And we could just kind of navigate to different chords. And let's say I want to end on a C7 chord. But I don't know a good chord to actually go in between the B flat and the C7. So what I'm able to do is to double click, and we could go to what we call the chord assistant. So you could actually have different levels of complexity. You could say, I want to be using common notes or different chords, and it will actually suggest chords that are correct for you musically. So I could say, okay, it's suggesting a G minor chord, and we could just try out different ideas that way. And if we wanted to actually come and change like the chord voicings, so if I wanted to go to like a second or first inversions where you have the same chords but just kind of voiced differently, we're able to do that. And if we have a, like, let's say we're doing this for a singer that, and let's say they don't like the key, or if it's a little too high, what we could do is just simply transpose. So we can say, okay, let's put it in the key of in E, a little more guitar friendly for that particular chord progression. So as we do this, I can now take these chords and I'll select them. If I drag it to a MIDI part, it will now automatically just, let's see if I can get this. Let me see if I could reboot here quickly. Probably come back. Sorry about that. So what I could do is just drag that to a particular chord to a MIDI track and have that automatically kind of carry over and create MIDI events. So just get this rebooted. Sorry about that. And the beauty of this, once we start working with chords, if I have kind of a sketch for a song, what I'm able to do is to just have a, so let's say if I have a song in my folder track here, and let me set my outputs so we could hear it. Is we could actually tell, so if I have like my sketch of a project here, I could now just open up all my different files in the folder track, and I could tell these different tracks to follow chords. So if I have just an idea of a particular song, I could come here and I could go to my chord track and I could just enter in chords and have all of the music follow. So if I say, okay, let's go to an E minor chord, followed by a C chord, and going to a D chord. And you can say I want a D7 with an A and a bass, and just try out different ideas. And this will move all of the different MIDI parts as you change the chord. So different tracks you could tell to automatically follow the chords or not to follow the chords. But as I come here and if I change that from an E to an A, you would see all those MIDI events just change. So this way you could have kind of a sketch for a song, and you could say, I don't want my drums to follow the chords, but I want all of my MIDI parts or my vocals to automatically follow directly with the chord track. So it gets to be a great way to take an existing file that you have. Maybe, I see people have tons of sketches of songs, and then you could take a sketch and then kind of complete it and change the chords without having to necessarily go into 100 different tracks to do that. Now, the chord track also makes sense when we get into working with vocal tuning. And one of the things that we could do, we'll just load up a different project here quickly, is if we wanted to do vocal tuning, and let's say someone had played like a piano part into the project and they don't necessarily know what chords that they were using. So let's say we'll start off with our piano and a vocal. And if I wanted to look at my piano part here, we could look at it in a key editor or just straight notation. So what I could do is I could actually select that piano part, and then from my project window menu, I could say, let's create chord symbols. And what this is going to do is automatically do an analysis of the piano part and create a chord track based upon that. So here I have an outline of all the chords that are being used in the project for me. And if I wanted to do lead sheets to pass on to other musicians, we could very easily just come directly to like the full score view and go to your advanced layout and say, okay, I just wanted to show the chord track, and that will automatically lay the chord track in for you. So as soon as we want to do a little working with vocals and having that work with the chord track, one of the things we could do is kind of built-in tuning. So if I wanted to just look at this, we could go to the built-in Vari Audio editor inside of Cubase, and as we play, we could base the coloring of the particular notes based on the chord track. So if I say, once we know what the chords are, we can see that we have notes that will be kind of, you know, a bluish color, a green color, a red color. So the green notes actually fall within the chord, and blue notes are within the scale and within key, and red notes are just bad. So if I wanted to come here, so say if I just move that to a note, and I know that it's red, so it's pretty universal in just about every country that red is bad. So you can say that's bad, but if I move it here, I know that that note falls within a chord just by the color of it. And if I wanted to just easily extend the length of different pitches, or I could take my notes here, and if I go to the bottom center, I could just have all those notes snap to being in tune that easily. So as we kind of work with this, we can have, I guess Zoom isn't liking my audio system here, but we could have all of your different tuning systems available so that you could tune based on those chords. So I forgot, let me just have sorry, I'm sharing my audio, which works for a while on Zoom. I forgot this. Let me just show one more thing. So once we have those chords set up, we will do also something a bit more creative. And, you know, if we have a project that's working and we've determined the chords and we want to actually generate vocal harmonies, we could do that automatically as well.
We have some questions, Greg.
Okay.
Maybe you can start
Okay.
taking those.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to go to ask a question, we'll do that.
Yes. So Kevin Sandoval, he would like to know, is this only in Cubase, or is this chord progression tool able to be used as a plugin in other DAWs?
It's a part of Cubase, so it's not necessarily a plugin per se. So it's just kind of part of the actual program itself.
That is a great, great feature. Unseen in other DAWs for sure.
Yeah.
Catherine would like to know, do you have instruments and a MIDI board to use with this program?
It'll work with any MIDI controller, and it comes with a number of different VST instruments. You know, at Steinberg, we invented VST instruments themselves, so we invented kind of the whole platform. So you could use, you know, and it comes with, you know, thousands of different sounds and patches.
That's great. And then Steinberg has been developing these things from really, really early on. So the amount of sounds and the banks that you have for all different instruments is just unlimited, right?
Yeah, you know, and we're part of the Yamaha family, so we have a lot of access to internal sounds from Yamaha, as well as our own sound design team, and of course, any third-party plugin will work very easily with Cubase.
Does it take VSTs, AU?
It doesn't do AU plugins because, you know, we invented VST and we try to be everything is cross-platform. So an AU is only limited to the Mac platform. So we use VST plugins, but I don't know of any plugins that are an AU that aren't in VST. So
That is correct, yes.
okay, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. I know we're running a little bit behind, but we'll go ahead and wrap up and we'll have Loic be able to turn it over.
Thank you, Greg, for showing us. Actually, I wanted to share with everybody, I have a link here. Steinberg release, maybe you can give a quick second about what's this package about, but I dropped in the chat room a link to a massive free download that you're offering for now for everybody to use. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so many of the people, you know, we realize are kind of stuck at home. So we have what we call a stay home elements bundle, and that includes the Cubase elements. We have Wavelab elements, which is done for mastering. We also have Dorico elements, which is a really high level notation program, and the Absolute VST4 collection. So you could download and run all those programs free of charge with all the licenses for 60 days. So as people are kind of stuck at home, we want you to be able to do some productions.
And I think Maria mentioned it, but I believe because of the whole history, you guys have massive libraries, and I think this one comes with 100 gig of sound.
Yeah, it's going to include like, you know, Halion Sonic, Halion, Groove Agent, a number of different synths, Retrolog. So a really wide variety of sounds and a wide palette to choose from.
Great. This is amazing. So guys, the link is in the chat room. Make sure you check it out. It's always a great opportunity to learn a new DAW and have a bunch of sounds and maybe test that feature that Greg shows. So Greg, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Really great to have you. This was a really short introduction, but you guys drop comments if you want Greg to come back to Music Expo and do a longer version. If you have any specific requests, we can probably re-accommodate that. So feel free to drop the comments or send me a message directly or email us. Always happy to provide more in-depth. Greg's last name is Greg Ondo. Great question. So now what we're going to do is, and by the way, Cubase was used. That's something I put in the email. But you know, Cubase is used by a lot of professionals, and one of them is in Kirkpatrick, who produced basically Dua Lipa's latest album. Go check it out. But it's really a professional tool that's used by professionals to make hits. Great. So now we're going to transition to our good friend Frank Socorro. And actually, this session is brought in collaboration with SonarWorks. And I believe we have folks from SonarWorks on the line. So, Frank.
Hey, everybody.
Here.
I think you got to unblock my video.
So I'm
there you go.
Video. Also, make sure to follow Music Expo SF on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're monitoring who's following us. We will reward with some giveaways. Also, those sessions are getting recorded, and you all became members of Music Expo on our website. And so we'll make those sessions available for viewing to all the members following today. And Frank, without further ado, to you.
Cool. Thanks, Loic. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great time so far. Want to say thanks to Loic and Music Expo for having me today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be walking you guys through the song that Ivan made with Jared. He sent me the tracks so that I could mix them. But I also wanted to talk to you guys about kind of our current situation. So because of what's happening, you know, you guys can see here, I'm at my home base, Vanquish Studios. But I've been working a lot from home. I came here today purely for the aesthetics, and then there's nobody here. So definitely social distancing. But I've been working a lot from home, which means I've been working in headphones. In the past, I would work on headphones, and then I would have to come to the studio, kind of check stuff, make sure it was okay, specifically the low end. But as things started started to kind of change, I knew that I was gonna be more dependent on these things, just because I don't really have a studio in my house, and that was a personal choice. So I was kind of looking for solutions and, you know, things to do. And Ivan was actually the one who told me about SonarWorks, and he had been telling me about it for some time. And because I didn't need to do it, I didn't really look into it. But recently, I would say within the past maybe 2 weeks, I started, you know, checking it out. I actually downloaded it. I downloaded the demo, which is great because I think you can try it for 21 days or 30 days, which is awesome. And literally on the second day, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is it for me. It really helped with these headphones. Some of the stuff I couldn't hear, I was not kind of able to get a better idea of what was going on. I always felt that these headphones, these are uh, Bear Dynamics. I always felt that they were a little bit bright, and I would notice that when I would come in the studio and check things. And this kind of really helped balance it out. So it was really useful. So anybody who's kind of, you know, in a situation like mine where you have to work in headphones, I definitely recommend it. And because of that, SonarWorks has been cool enough to allow me to give away a license today, and then Loic has some other license that they'll be giving away through some different postings and stuff like that you guys are actually going to be active. But at the end of today of my session, I'm going to put out a question, and the person with the right answer is going to get a lovely license for SonarWorks. So pay attention to what I'm talking about, and possibly win yourself a license. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So I'm sharing. Can everybody see that? If you can see it, just, you know, clap or send a nice chat message.
Yes, we can.
Everybody can see it. Okay, cool. So let me just do a real quick test. Can you guys tell me if you guys can hear it? Oh. Are you guys getting audio?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so so the cool thing about SonarWorks, and I want to show you guys real quick, is that you can either use it as a plugin directly in your DAW. So you will put it on your master fader, and you up here there are different calibration profiles for different sets of headphones. So obviously these are my headphones, and this is my calibration profile. And as you can see, what I was saying about them being a little bit bright, and then once you select your calibration profile and you turn it on, it actually does some alternate EQing to get you kind of to this point. You also have, you know, the ability to kind of adjust them a little bit. So you have a kind of a tilt EQ or some bass boost, or the opposite, boost some highs. And then there's some predefined curves, which are, you know, an opportunity for you to kind of hear it. They have one that's like a THX one, which mimics what the THX guys use. So if you're doing like TV or doing stuff for Netflix, hopefully you're, you know, you're getting that kind of work. You can use this as a cool reference. And there's a bunch of calibrations in there. The other way that it works is actually as a system-wide plugin. So you can actually use it to EQ the entire output of your system, so that when you plug in your headphones to your laptop, even if you're not in your DAW and you don't have a plugin on, like let's say you just want to listen to music, but you want to calibrate your headphones so that it's as accurate as possible, you can also use it in standalone, which is really useful if you're listening to mixes for references. So I use, like, when somebody's like, hey, listen to this song as a reference, I'll put on my headphones, I'll open Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, and I'll play it, and I'll use the system-wide calibration so that I can hear my headphones calibrated. And then when I go in my DAW, I know what the headphones sound like, I know what the reference sound like, and then I can just go from there, and I don't have to actually import the audio into my DAW to kind of use it as a reference. So For right now, I'm going to bypass it because the song's already done. I've already done the mixing in this. Here's Ivan's mix ref. I'm going to kind of start from top to bottom. So one of the things that I do when I first get the session is I will organize it into groups and sections. And typically this will be as follows. The top is my drums. So all my drums are going into this aux right here, this one labeled drums. And then also any effects that I might use for the drums will also go into that aux, so that anything associated with the drums or that specific group of instruments will be together. Next, since Ivan actually had a couple of basses, I made a bass group. So all my basses are going into this bass group, as well as this effect that I'm using on the bass. Then we have our kind of keys guitars group, and I usually put these together, which is usually my biggest group. And these are all going here, as well as some effects that I'm using for the keys. Now, there's a couple of tracks in here that are effects, and it's specifically this one. This is a reverb that Ivan had printed for the keys. So I put them in with the keyboards because I'm actually using his reverb as well as the stuff that I'm doing. And I kind of have that in that group. And then all of those individual music groups go into this last group right here, which I call the track. And the reason I do that is sometimes I will process the entire track. The reason I do this is sometimes I'll get a song that was once a 2-track and a vocal, and they might have, you know, been in love with the way that that 2-track sounded. So what I'll do in that case is I'll bring in that 2-track into the session and I'll put it right next to this. And then I'll A/B their 2-track with kind of how I have my track sounding. And hopefully mine sounds better and also makes more sense with the vocal. So that's what I do that. And then also sometimes I will put some sort of processing on that track to maybe make space for the vocal. So does that make sense so far? Am I talking too fast? Any questions? No?
We actually have some questions now that you're asking.
Cool.
So Zio wants to know how efficient the Sonar work is in terms of normalized leveling. Have you bumped into a case where it erases data or it makes it sound a bit blurred?
No, and it actually doesn't normalize the volume at all. Like that would mean it would be doing some sort of compression, and it doesn't. What it does is I mean, the guys from SonarWorks are on here and they could probably give you a bit more of the technical details. But what it does is it basically, like, whatever your EQ curve is on your headphones, it basically does the opposite and inverts it, and then does some phase calibration so that you don't have any crazy phase inconsistencies, to kind of try to flatten out your headphones as much as possible. In addition to that, there are some buttons on there at the bottom that can give you phase linearity, which is right here. The only thing is that the more linear the phase, the greater the latency. So I wouldn't recommend it if you're tracking vocals, but I would definitely, for mixing, it's great to have that kind of latency on there. It doesn't really matter, but tracking vocals, it would definitely interfere. SonarWorks, if you guys are in the chat, if I messed anything up, please let me know. I love your plugin. Please don't hurt me.
We have another question from Silky. Can you repeat what you said about the last tracks group with all the extra tracks?
Yes. Okay, so basically all the groups, so this blue group, this purple group, and this red group, these are my instruments from the track, and they're all fed into this purple track. And what I was saying is, sometimes I get a song to mix, and when they recorded it, they were recording to a 2-track, meaning that somebody had bounced the song, the beat, and they were just recording to that beat. And that producer might have put a bunch of stuff on the stereo bus and, you know, maxed it out. And so I put that there, and I kind of use that to listen back and forth to their original 2-track, and then currently what I have as the musical bed for the vocals. Does that make sense?
It does for me. Let's see what they say, but they have not complained so far.
Okay.
Babby wants to know, can you please repeat how you treat the vocal tracks?
I haven't treated the vocal tracks yet, so I will definitely get into there. As you can see, there's a bunch of stuff here, and there's automation and all kinds of stuff, so I'm definitely going to get to that. But I wanted to talk about that music bed first, because a lot of music that we get nowadays once started as a 2-track and a vocal. And sometimes, like the guys were saying earlier, you know, that you get married to the demo and you want to keep hearing the demo over and over. And my job, whether it was, you know, bestowed upon me or not, is to beat the demo. So that's constantly what I'm working on. I'm always comparing back and forth to the demo because I know that that's what I'm up against, and obviously any references that they would have sent me to kind of use for the song. Cool.
You want to move on? We don't have any more questions.
Okay, cool. All right. So the next set of tracks are these lovely red tracks right here, which are the vocals. And there's a verse, there's a pre and a chorus lead. And these are what Ivan sent me. I have those 3 tracks because they are essentially the lead going to this one aux. And then there's a rap lead, which had a different kind of texture to it. So I put it on a separate track. So I'm using a different set of like settings for that one. And all those are going to a vocal bus. In addition to that, Ivan sent me the backgrounds, so lead and harmonies, and that's going to this first BG track here. And then here are all the audio or vocal effects that Ivan had. Okay, these are all the reverbs and delays that he already had on the vocal. And he sent me them printed. And what I do is I sent them to this track called Vox Effects, and I actually have a little S1 stereo imager on there, just kind of move them out of the way. And then I have my own vocal effects that I've decided to add. And then all that is summed to this second purple track, which is the overall vocal track. And if you notice right here, I've kind of bumped it like half a dB. And that's just because I felt it needed to be a little bit louder. And then obviously at the end, we have my stereo bus with a bunch of stuff on it. And I'll talk to you guys kind of like why I do those things and what's actually on there. So if that's cool, I'm going to start from the very top. So are we good, Maria? We're good?
Doing great.
Awesome. Okay. So one of the things that I know you heard Ivan and Jared say was kind of like the idea of this track, and they kind of had these drum loops. And when I heard this, I was really excited because obviously I'm from that era. I'm 42 years old, so I grew up listening to Wu-Tang, and I love that style of drum, and I even love the newer people that kind of do it. And when I listened to this song, it gave me that feeling, but it also gave me a newer feeling, kind of like a Mike Dean Kanye collaboration. Even some of the John Bryan stuff kind of had this really cool feel. So I wanted to keep it. One of the things that I always do when somebody's going to send me a mix and they're like, hey, should I bypass all the plugins? I'm like, no, send me it exactly how you have it, because I want to continue from where you left off. Sometimes somebody might have processed something too much and I can't, you know, there's no going back from it. And I might ask for, hey, can you send me a dry version? But that's rare. Most of the time I try to work right from where the producer left off, because again, they've been listening to this record in this state for a specific amount of time. And I need to kind of go from there and just stretch their record, meaning like I'm going to make it the bass lower, I'm going to make the highs higher, I'm going to make it wider, taller, faster. So I need to kind of use what they already did, or that's how I like to do it, and kind of build on that and make it bigger. So if you notice on the individual tracks, which are these drums here, I don't actually have any plugins on them. I have a little bit of reverb on these loops, but because I actually liked how they sounded together. And what I like to do nowadays a lot is I actually just like to work kind of top down. So the aux that all the drums is going into, I'm actually doing my processing there. And if there's something that bothers me or that I want to tweak, I'll go back individually, but I try not to do too much to the original sound and just kind of like make what they have really cool. So from the top, you can see on a couple of these drums, I have some reverb. So I'll play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute some of these other instruments. And I'm going to mute that. Nope. Mute this. All right. Okay, so that's our drum loop, and then later on it kind of builds up. I like the way the drum sound. There was
Frank, you cut off.
know
I
why.
believe it's from the solo.
I
Yeah.
know why. I solo save that. Okay. Can you hear me? Cool.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. So on this track right here, there was that kind of like he added like a kind of like a 808 type drum and then like another snare, but it was really dry, and I felt like when it played with the other loop, which was like the aggressive kind of 90s hip hop loop, it needed a little bit more ambient. So I added this little drum reverb here, and I used a really simple deverb, nothing fancy. It's actually kind of a long decay, but what I did was I EQ'd all the low end out so that it would only ring on the snare or the kind of the upper end of the actual loop. So and this comes from in me working through the hip hop industry for a long time. A lot of times I would get a drum loop, and sometimes I felt like, oh, I wish I could put reverb on the snare, and the only way to do that would be to send the sound to the reverb and actually EQ the input to the reverb so that only the snare would cut through. You could also do it with a gate. There's a million ways to do it, but that's kind of something I did there. I also added some reverb to this track right here, which is that one with the it's kind of like that percussive loop. And I added that also to give it some space, so when it comes in, it feels a little bit more important. I really like that part. Now on this here, I'm going to kind of go through what I did here for the drum bus. Okay, this is a drum bus, and my favorite plugin, which is going to do that. Okay, cool. All right. So at the very top of the chain, I have this deflector, which is from Kush Audio, which I'm using it to kind of saturate the drums. Just this is kind of like a distressor type plugin, and I'm using it. I'm actually not using it all the way 100% wet, meaning I'm kind of doing a parallel on this. So you kind of hear I kind of like mucking it up a little bit, just kind of making it a little bit dirty, but I am only using it at a certain percentage. That's probably about 30-40%. So I'm not using all of it. I'm still getting the clean sound that's coming right behind it. In addition to that, I have this amazing plugin from Acoustica. It's called Tan, and it's kind of an SSL style compressor. And I'm using it in the pump setting that most people use SSL in. One of the great things about this plugin, one is it has a wet dry knob. Well, let me say one was that this plugin was actually free. I don't know if it's still free, but it was free for a really long time. And it has the dry wet, so I'm only doing 70% of this. And then also it has this schmod kind of function, which adds some really cool kind of low harmonic kind of vibes. And I'm not doing a lot. It's doing like barely 2 dB. So I'm kind of only putting back 2 dB. So this is just something I like to put on the stereo bus. This is the SSL EQ. Really simple. Just a little bit of the low frequency. I'm doing the divide by 3, which makes this 300 hertz actually 100 hertz, which is where a lot of like the little punchiness of a kick drum is. And then I'm boosting the highs like at around 15K, and that's really for hi-hats and the top of the snare. I see a bunch of comments and stuff like that. Is now a good time to stop, Maria, and answer some questions? Or
We have a question from Claire.
okay.
Hi, just to let you know, Maria said that everyone has a bit of OCD at about, which is true, otherwise you wouldn't be here. At about 12:55, when talking about labeling tracks and this entirely incorrect and quite an ableist viewpoint. So I would really appreciate if she could publicly take back that comment and apologize for it. I'm really sorry for it. OCD is a clinical diagnosis that can be debilitating. So no, not everyone has a bit of OCD. Claire, I'm really sorry. This is not a, we're not mocking anyone. I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any matter. What I was trying to refer to was that we're all in here because we have a very structured engineering mind. Yes. And the fact that Frank for example, was laughing and I was taking this very lightly is because we have been doing this for a while, and we have developed a very structured mindset and a very structured way of working around. Otherwise, we would not be efficient.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we go back at certain stuff and we repeat and we repeat and we deconstruct makes us a little bit more obsessive than most people, but that is because we enjoy and we love what we do. So I do
Correct.
apologize for people that felt like we took this the wrong way. And Claire, to you also as well, my biggest apologies. Frank,
Absolutely.
I take it back to you.
No, and just on what Maria says, like, it's really hard to do this job and be disorganized because you are, you know, one of the things I'll tell people when they're starting out to engineering, I'm like, yeah, your job is to capture everything that's in the room, record everything, make sure things don't clip. You're the technical person in the room. You're the one that makes sure that the session keeps going, but you should also be invisible. And then at the end of the day, you're the one responsible for all the files, because if somebody paid you to do a session and at the end of the session you can't turn in those files, you didn't do your job. Okay, so just us being like super attentive to every little detail and making sure is just because we know the pitfalls. So not wanting to offend anybody, we just kind of, this is how we've been working for a very long time. All right, so
And we do have a question
yeah, go.
from Babby. Do you usually compress drums before EQ? Is it just for this track, hip hop genre? What is your take on that?
I typically compress before EQ, except on vocals where I usually put like a little EQ to cut off low end. But I usually compress first because I love compression, and I don't EQ as much as I compress. I definitely don't. I usually try to shape my sounds more with compression. So using things like the deflector to kind of saturate things and kind of get tones more than I EQ. I'm actually not a big EQer. And you guys will see that, like, the most of my EQ is done on vocals, and it's for shaping. I really don't EQ stuff. And then the other thing is, a lot of times now I'm getting tracks that were produced in a DAW, so they already sound really cool. So like, you know, when I'm mixing, it's not about me. It's not about my techniques. It's not about my template. It's not like about my cool thing that I do. It's like, how am I going to make this the best thing possible? And sometimes that requires EQ and sometimes it doesn't. So it's really based on the song. But I honestly, personally, I don't really EQ that much. So then you guys will see that as we go. So last plugin here in this chain is this lovely tape plugin. Now, I'm not using this plugin because I want tape warmth. Like, that's not what I'm going for. I'm actually using this plugin because there's this thing right here, this crosstalk, that's supposed to mimic what happens when you would record on tape and tracks would bleed onto each other. But it does this magical thing to the low end. And I've never actually spoken to anybody at SoftTube about this or like what it actually does. But I feel like it just makes my low end so much like fatter and also kind of wide too, which is really interesting. So I don't know if you guys will be able to hear if you're in headphones, but this is actually a really interesting plugin. Oh, of course the drum stop.
Maybe it's just a crosstalk between the left and right channels.
I'm not exactly sure what it does, but if you have a chance to and you download a demo and just put it on some drums and just turn it up, like you can be obscene with it, and sometimes I am, and I turn it up all the way. It just adds like this really cool subharmonic like thickness to your whatever you put it on, that it can actually it's actually helps make just kind of hold everything down down there. I'm a big fan of like super low end, so this plugin is one of my favorites. Hello.
Hey, I think we got disconnected.
Yeah, I don't know
back.
what happened.
Yeah.
Is
everybody back?
Yeah, it looks like everybody back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I think everybody's coming back slowly.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. That was funky. Well, welcome back, everybody. That was the NSA making sure we weren't saying anything. They were just logging off now. So, okay. So yes, I was talking about that tape plugin. So once I have the drums in place, one of the things that I like to do, and this is something that I've been doing a long time, is that once I get the drums in place, I will typically work on the bass, and then I will follow that with the vocals. So I'll go drums, bass, vocals, and then I'll add everything else in. That's kind of how, like, that's my approach. So I'm gonna unmute this bass sound now, and there was like some cool stuff here because I even had this the one bass sound that was kind of the one that was like a fake real bass that he played. In addition to that, he had that distorted sound. So I kind of turned that one up because I knew I was going to need it to cut through. So I actually boosted that one up a couple of dB. And then there was this other bass sound here, which is like a synth. And then there's like a cool growl thing here at the end. Cool. So I wanted all those things to work together. So what I did was I routed them all to this this track, and I'm using a Pultec, a 2-tech, sorry, CL1B on the bass. Nothing fancy, not a really fast attack, kind of slow, not super high ratio either. Very simple. I am doing some EQing here. Again, very little, just boosting some kind of fun frequencies. And then again here with my bass plugin, and you can see here I kind of cranked it up a little bit more because I really want the bass on this to be more important than on the drums. Okay, I want this to be a little bit more fatter. And then in addition to that, I'm just doing a little bit of just kind of chorusing, which I like to do on the bass. And I'm using the Microshift plugin, which is, if anybody has UA and you have the Roland, what's it called, Mary? You know what it is? The Roland, the chorus one?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
It's like black. It's got 3 buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that one.
Is it the Dimension D?
Yes, the Dimension D.
Yes.
So if you have UA, the Dimension D plugin and the Microshift, they're kind of similar plugins, and they do kind of give you like a cool chorus effect, which I like to do on bass because it helps, especially if you're trying to get it to cut through on smaller speakers. So in addition to having this kind of distorted bass track, I have a little bit of that chorus on there just to kind of help have the bass cut through. So let's listen to this real quick. Okay, so I wanted kind of like this, obviously like 90s kind of hip hop feel, and the bass to go through there. So now I'm going to move down to our vocal. So here's he sent me 3 lead vocal tracks as well as the background tracks. So on the lead, I'm going to kind of make this a little bit bigger.
Before we move on, we have a question from Quiet Gecko. Do you usually want to hit a specific RMS with the drums, or it depends on the track?
Well, because most of the stuff that I do is like R&B and hip hop. If I play this right now and watch this meter, I try to get it as high as possible because that's the genre that I'm working in. I look for the kick and the snare, especially like hip hop R&B stuff. I'm looking like vocal, kick, snare are kind of like should be almost on the same plane, and then the bass should be supporting everything, and then usually the keys are kind of like around all that stuff. So those are the 3 things I focus on when I'm doing this kind of music. If it's something else, because I do other types of music, I will kind of adjust that balance. But I'm a drum guy. I love drums. I'm not a drummer, but I'm a drum guy. So like my drums are always super loud, and you know, people who come to me are used to having loud drums. So that's kind of my thing. And if it's not your thing, it's okay. It doesn't have to be. It's just my thing. So here we have our vocal, and the vocal actually already had some stuff, like it kind of sounded a certain way already.
I hear them talking camouflage. I don't know the sounds that chime and the words they cry. Oh, break me into peace of mind.
So you can hear there's like effects those are some of the effects that Ivan had printed. So what I wanted to do was just kind of bring out some stuff from the vocal. So usually off rip, I put a one band or just really standard Pro Tools plugins, cutting off any weird low end just in case they recorded it like in their house. Arvox, super big fan of Arvox. Not for any other particular reason except for I've been using it for 20 years. That's pretty much it. Like, it's just my go-to. I know what it does. I know how it sounds, and I use it, and it goes there, and it does exactly what I want. There were some S's on this. So on this one, I wanted to kind of show a couple of ways to do things. I typically use two de-essers. I'll use one that's a little bit lower, and then I use one that's a little bit higher. So this first one, I'm using between 7 and 9K. And this is actually a really cool plugin from Sonox, the Super DS, because it does that range, and then you can set how narrow the band is once it starts.
They cut me open and turn off the light.
And it also does that cool thing where it shows you like the peaks, which are the red lines, and you can kind of narrow in on the frequencies that you actually want to DS. So it's really useful. So I'll do this.
Just go ahead and tell me.
And you can see right there that I had one that was past it. So then what I'll do is usually I'll use a second de-esser. And on this one, I'm using the UA, the precision de-esser, which if you have access to this plugin, which if you have any UA stuff, you probably do, because I think there's one of the free ones. This is actually a great de-esser that you can get a lot of de-essing done, and it still sounds pretty natural. So I have this one set at 11.2. And together I was able to kind of tame some of those S's.
Voices, they creep through the floor. Yeah, I hear them talking camouflage.
Cool. So after that, I have another EQ. I cut off some more low end there, and then I did a little dip in this lower frequency. Now, this is not something I normally do. This is actually a kind of frequency range where sometimes I'll boost to give presence. When you get really close to a microphone like this, you create proximity, and sometimes that makes you feel like the person is closer. So I usually boost that because a lot of times I'll get vocals where the vocalist maybe wasn't close or didn't have good mic technique. But actually on this track, I actually kind of cut it because it was feeling a little bit muddy, especially with what was going on in the drums. So I try to avoid that. I then have a second compressor here, which is the Soft Tube TLA 100. Not doing a lot of compression here.
I don't know the sounds that chime and the words they cry. Oh, break me into.
But definitely bringing out something. And this plugin actually has something really cool that I really like too, which is the saturation knob, which I will crank, and then I will kind of do a parallel on. So it means I'm getting some of that saturation, but that's not all I'm hearing. I'm hearing half of the original signal that was going into this, and then half of the process signal. If anybody here is a fan of Britney Spears, a lot of those vocals in the early Britney Spears stuff always had a little bit of saturation when they were doing it, and it had like this cool effect. And it, you would hear like super loud breaths and stuff like that. And I am a big fan of that sound. So a lot of times when I'm mixing vocals, if I have the ability to, I will actually add some of that saturation and bring it in onto the track, because I feel like it adds a cool texture. Although I'm not trying to like distort vocals or make it sound crazy, I feel like in some instances it can work. And I like it especially on really pretty tracks where it kind of makes the vocal a little bit aggressive. So obviously, so not everybody's okay with that, but it's something that I typically try to go for in my mixes. So here's my
peace of mind. They cut me open and turn off the light. Just go ahead and tell me what you find.
Okay. And then last but not least, a little mag EQ. So just a little of the airband, actually a lot of the airband. It's one of the plugins that I'm super liberal with. I just like the way it sounds.
Voices, they creep through the floor. Yeah, I hear them talking camouflage.
So this is a plugin. Sometimes I'll be like, somebody will be like, hey, I'm having trouble. I wish it was brighter. I'll be like, do you have the mag plugin? I'm like, just crank it. And they're like, I'm at 3. I'm like, no, crank it. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, just do it. And then they're like, oh yeah, that sounds way better. And I'm just like, yeah, like you can crank this plugin as long as it's not distorting, you'll be okay. And then we have the rap vocal, which is a little bit different. I used similar kind of setup, but just this was already a little bit aggressive. So I switched the de-esser. I only used the universal audio one on here, and a similar EQ, but I kind of moved some stuff around some of the bands just to kind of make a little bit of space. Still using this with the saturation. I actually used less of it here because it was already kind of aggressive. And then the airband actually boosted a little bit of this kind of 2.5 to kind of make him stick out a little bit. So I'll play that.
All these girls wistful, but now I'm sitting wistful. I guess that's why they say just be careful what you wish for. My memories, they burn hotter than a fucking disco. Trying to realign my mind and shoot it like a missile. Visceral, right? Yeah, I'm back in my bag. These rappers are mad. They lacking what I magically have. Emphatic.
So on this one, there's a lot of like delays that they had done, and I mimicked some of those delays. And then I forgot to mention this on the main lead. I have a couple of effects that I will kind of go to. One of them is this eighth note delay. I'm a big fan of this because it gives you the feeling of a reverb without some of like, I feel like some of the stuff that, I'm not a huge fan of reverb on vocals. I use it because I know it's like a thing that people expect, but I'm a much bigger fan of using a short delay as a reverb. And then what I do is, like for instance on this one, is I roll a lot of the hi-hats off. So it becomes like this whoa, 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 whoa kind of effect. And it fills the space, especially when it's an eighth or 16th note, it fills the space in between the words, but it's not overt and it's not in your face and it doesn't detract away from what you're trying to do. Okay, and then I'm using a quarter note, which I think I only had in certain places. Oh no, it was all the way through. The song was slow enough. I think that's why I left it all the way through. And then this is, I don't remember what that was. I think I ended up not doing that. I think I was going to do like a side chain to the track and I ended up not doing it. So yeah. Okay. So that is the lead and rap. Do we have any questions before I move on? And I'll do the backgrounds and then
We do. Adam wants to know, can we hear just the DPP without the main track?
From on the bass?
I assume.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. So if I do this, if I put this in pre, I should be able to solo this and this. Oh. Can you guys hear it?
Can.
So you hear it's kind of like stereo-y. Yeah. So that's what DPP. And it's not DPP. It's called DPP because there's a patch on the Eventide H3000 called dual pitch. And for the longest time to create that effect, I would use the pitch plugin in Pro Tools. And I would pitch one side up 9 cents and the other side down 9 cents. And I mimic the settings of dual pitch in the plugin. So now when I do that effect, doesn't matter what plugin it is, it's always called DPP because we're anal. Because we're anal. And
exactly,
we can't
you
let
can say
things
that.
go. And we can't let things go. So if forever for me, that's always going to be DPP.
We have more questions. How do you decide within all of your plugins, which might be a huge list, which ones to use? Or you just play it safe and use your go-tos? From Miguel.
So, okay. So there are songs where I can experiment, and then there are songs where like I have to play super conservative. So I have kind of like my go-tos that I always like. If it's like a speed thing, like if I'm like, yo, you need to knock out this track, you have, 6 hours. There's no going back. Like we're not gonna have time for changes. I'm gonna go with my go-tos because I know how they work. If I have a little bit of extra time, like I can go back and forth with the producer or the artist, I'm gonna try stuff, and because there are so many plugins, and I've been super fortunate because I work at SAE. Like we get a lot of stuff given to us, and just working in the field, like people give you stuff, like, so I'm all about like trying it and like figuring out what new I can do. If I have the time, I will experiment when I get a track to mix. Like, I'm not all about like, I'm just going to do everything that works. Like, no, like I'm down to try stuff. And it's also one of the reasons why I ask for people to send me the track with their effects. Like, I want to see what you're doing because it might inspire me or it might show me something new. Like, I'm always down to learn something new. I'm not going to be offended if you're like, I like my reverb better. I'm like, all right, cool. Your reverb is your reverb. So, you know, so anything else?
Yes, Diego, how do you mix the bass and the drums together? Are there any another elements you like to mix together?
Not really. I usually I'll put the drums in, and I make a decision as to who's going to hold down the super low end. Is it going to be the kick or is it going to be the bass? And once that decision is made, I bring them in and I work with them and I do my processing, but I'm always comparing the two because I want, like, again, like just me growing up listening to the music I listened to was super low end heavy, and that's just in the direction that I tend to lean. So I look for that, and then it's the vocal, because one of the things that I do is I feel like if it sounds good, vocals, drums, bass, like I feel like, yo, you could put this record out if it was just vocal, drums, bass, then everything else is strawberry sprinkles. All right, like all the other music stuff is just like icing on the cake, and then that gives me space to kind of bring that stuff in and do like fun automation things. But if I can hold down like, you know, the main meat and potatoes of it, and it can be a song by itself like that, I feel like I did my job. So
Thank you, Frank. We have one more question and then it'll be time for you to close. From
yeah.
Hector, how do you deal with gain staging? Easy question. And also know that with all the processing, you won't clip. You mentioned your signal is hot. How do you comprise signal, loudness, and clipping?
So I'm actually a big fan of clipping, and something that I think Maria and you and I have talked about, like we and I had a conversation about clipping. Like everybody clips. It's like the dirty secret that nobody likes to talk about. Like, you know, we all do it just because we're competing with records that are really loud, and but there's ways to do it where you can control it. So since I'm about to close up, I'll just say, like, you know, I did kind of similar processing to the vocals and the backgrounds. And then one thing I did was, obviously I have all my keyboards and guitar stuff here. So they already had like cool spacey sounds. I added a little bit of like reverb on that piano riff and even like a key space using this really cool plugin called Black Hole from Eventide, which is just like this super dense, like deep reverb. And I like to use it on keyboards because it gives me like a really cool, so I'll play this here so you guys kind of hear it. All these Can you hear the tail? It's like this super long, like delay tail. And I love using it because it's like, it's subtle, but it does has a really great effect. Then I'm also doing something that kind of like a slap little echo thing using Telray, which is an old school plugin, but super fun. And then what I did on the keys, I actually did do this. I used the vocals to trigger a sidechain in this band, which is kind of like our frequency band for the vocals. So when the vocalist is singing, am I still soloed? No. Am I? Yeah. So when the vocalist is singing, this band is going to get compressed on those keys. Back, all the memories call me. I won't let them take me again when I fall. Bypassed it like a dork. Voices, they creep through the floor. Yeah, I hear them talking camouflage. So that means that any music that's going through that aux at that point, if there's like a key or anything that's in the similar frequency range, which there is with some of that piano stuff, it actually makes a little bit of space for the vocal, and that just allows me to have my vocal sit on top of the track a little bit more. I know we're running short on time, so I want to just kind of show you guys the stereo bus. So stereo bus, I'm a big fan of this plugin right here, Shadow Hill's mastering compressor. And I know this is like, bro, that's $300. I'm not buying that plugin. It's cool. You don't have to buy it. I'll tell you exactly what's going on here. This first section is an optical compressor, and this second section is like a kind of like a SSL style compressor. So you could make your own, maybe use something like a Fairchild first and then follow it with a, you know, obviously it's not exactly, but you can kind of get a similar feel to what this is doing. Also, this right here, the steel, that's my jam right there. So it's got 3 options for the transformer. I'm a big fan of steel. I do use ozone, but I use it for specific things. Okay, and it's this imager, just because I can push different bands differently. So I'll typically push the upper bands up a little bit, and then here in the mid and the vocals. Sometimes I'll bring the lower end more narrow, but I didn't do it here on this one because I wanted that width on the bass. This is a Millennia EQ, boosting some top end, nothing crazy, maybe like a dB or so. And then here's the clipping thing that we were talking about. This is a newfangled audio. It's called Elevate. It's got a lot of really cool functions. It's got a filter, like it's got, I think, 27 bands, which can seem a little bit daunting, but it's actually pretty cool. You have control over the bands on the limiter, and this is something that I like to do. Little trick right here. I'll boost at 102 up on the transients, which will push those transients a little bit louder. And then the other thing I love about this is that it matches your level, so you can hear what it's doing.
I don't know the sounds that chime and the words they cry. Oh, break me into peace of mind. They cut me open and turn off.
I always find like it pushes things up. It gives me like a really modern sound. And then here in the parameters, I always like clip it a little bit and kind of push it over the top. But it controls everything. It keeps everything in play. And it just allows me to have like that loud, really popular mix. And I know we always talk about dynamic range. And there's ways you can keep dynamics. Like if I print this, it's not going to look, like Maria likes to say, like a stick of butter. It's going to have, internal dynamics, and there's loud parts and there's soft parts. But there's ways to get that loudness without completely obliterating your stereo bus with like a limiter and stuff like that. So just baby steps. So I think that's it. I'll answer some questions, and then we'll give away that SonarWorks.
One final question. It's just a simple question for you. Can you share one major tip for mixing, mastering?
One major tip for mixing and mastering, respect the sonic choices of the producer and the artist. Listen to what they were trying to do and just try to like expand on that, and not be so worried about your style or your plugin list. Because I know people get a bunch of plugins. They're like, I got to use all of them. It's like, no, you don't. You just have to make the song better. And if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job. So it's definitely respect sonic choices.
It falls back a little bit of what you and I were talking about. Certain engineer talking about F your demo. There's always that discussion, right?
Absolutely. And when you're mixing, you're going to get a demo, and you might hate the demo, but it's not your song. It's their song. You're providing a service. You're trying to get it to the next level, and hopefully you can have a conversation with that person, and you guys can come to some sort of, agreement on what it is that needs to happen for the song to be the best. But definitely respect choices.
But add in your own personal style and your flavor.
Your strawberry sprinkles.
That's what I think about you, Frank. Strawberry sprinkles.
Okay, so we're gonna give away this SonarWorks. I can probably stop sharing the screen now. We're gonna go away the SonarWorks. So what should we do? How should we just have them answer in the chat, like the first one that pops up, or?
Yeah, we should.
What do you think, Maria? Yeah, first one that pops up.
Yeah. So ask your question, and the first one reply correctly in the chat wins the. So the first correct answer, basically.
Okay. So for those of you who are in the chat right now, get your keyboards ready. What, besides being able to use it as a plugin, what is the other way that we can use SonarWorks? What is it called? Boom. Koshi, system-wide. KOSHL. There you go. They got it.
All right. Firstly, congrats, man.
Congrats. That was awesome. That was some quick typing. Man, you guys, thank you so much for the questions. This was amazing. I want to say something. Can I say something, Lloyd, before we go?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Just give me a second. Quad Gecko and everybody else, we're going to give away 2 more license at the end of the live stream. So stick around for another 20 minutes and you might have a chance to win. So, you know, if you didn't get it this time, there will be 2 more chances.
There's obviously some more
I was just
opportunities.
responding to some of the chats here. Frank,
Okay.
yeah.
So somebody earlier asked, like, you know, do you prefer recording in Ableton to Ivan and stuff like that? And I want to just kind of expand on that. Like, your DAW, the DAW that you're good at, that's your DAW. Like, you wouldn't tell a guitar player, like, you should play drums. Like, no, that's their thing. Like, whatever your DAW is that you feel comfortable in, and the one that lets you express whatever you're trying to express, that's your DAW. Don't let people pressure you into being like, Ableton is better or this is better. Like, they all have their strengths and their weaknesses. I mix in Pro Tools. You couldn't get me to mix in another DAW. It's really difficult for me because I've been using this thing for 20 years. Like, at this point, it doesn't make sense for me to change. If you're super familiar with FL or Cubase or whatever you're familiar, and that's your thing, bro. Like, kill it with your thing. And trying to learn another DAW because there's somebody else thinks is cool is like, it's a waste of time. Just do your thing and just be awesome at your thing. So that's it. I'm getting off my soapbox.
And if I may pitch in just a little comment, like, for example, I use Pro Tools. I've been using it also for 20 years. But when it comes down to adjusting a loop to a tempo, Ableton.
Absolutely.
Right there. If it comes down to pitching a track down or changing key, Logic. So know your DAWs and know your tools. Just because you're stuck in one with the features of one DAW and is your tool of trade, there are other things that you can do, and you can just pop them up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% correct, Maria. And I just lit the board up. Sorry, board. Anyways. All right, Loic, what do you want us to do now? Do you want me to do jumping jacks?
No. One more question here.
Yes, we have one question that popped in. Do you use a variety of limiters, or do you just have a few go-to favorites?
I have some go-to favorites, but like I said, I'm always trying new things. Before I got the newfangled one, I was using Ozone, but there was another one that I was using. I'm trying to remember now what it was.
L2.
I haven't used L2 in a really long time. I got away from it for a while. I was using, I think it was the Oxford one I was using for a while, but I kind of switched up. So this one I just like because of the saturation thing, and I feel like, again, a lot of the things I do is just because they get me to the point that I need to get. Like, I'm not, you know, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, so, any other questions, Maria?
Yeah, we do. From Babby, do you mix on analog consoles, or is it always on Pro Tools? Is it just for schmucks?
I actually, this is one room here at the studio, and I have another room. Well, we have another room, which is the room that I mostly work in, which is a smaller room. And I actually use a Neve summing console there, summing mixer. And I actually print back through a Burl 2 channel. And I like what happens in analog. But I thought it was great to show. I'm actually working on my laptop right now, and that's how I've been working for the past almost 3 weeks, just because driving here and like whatever the whole situation. So I'm making adjustments to get what I get from my setup onto here on the laptop. So when I can, I do like to use analog equipment, but it's not a necessity. It doesn't have to be. I can make it. I mean, at this point, if I can't get it done, I can't get it done. You know.
What is your go-to master chain for a hip hop song?
That one that I just showed you, it's some variation of that. The Shadow Hills is a big, I'm a big fan of it, and sometimes I'll put it on right at the beginning of the mix just because it sounds a certain way. But yeah, that kind of stuff that I did there is pretty much it.
Who does the Shadow Hill plugin?
That's the UA one, but Plugin Alliance also has
Plugin Alliance has 2 actually. It has that one, which is very similar, and they also do the Class A, which is I believe transformer less, and it sounds amazing. If you
it's also it's a new what do they call it when they capture it? It's a new
like a resound. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like they ran it through with newer computers and stuff like that. So it's a new not algorithm, it's a new model or whatever.
It sounds great. If you guys can download it, I'm a big fan. I've basically moved on to that one.
Actually,
We have one other question
Maria,
from Kevin. Yes.
just dropped the link, and it's Frank. It was at $300, but apparently it's at $70.
What? I'm definitely
Wow.
buying that today.
Is that what it is? I shared the right
That's
link.
insane.
Sounds like a good deal.
Oh, that's a super deal. Plug-in Alliance better send us something.
That's a great deal. Yeah. People go there right now. Thank you for sharing that, Loic. Bye, bye, bye. From Kevin Sandoval, what is your day like during these isolated times, and how has your work been affected? Are you still optimistic about projects during this time? Whew.
Yes. Okay. Really quick story, and I've been sharing. I'm actually gonna make a video about this and post it on my IG. By the way, Alphabet Music is my IG, so if you want to follow me, also follow Maria. We're both pretty entertaining on Instagram.
Yes, we are.
So really quickly, Loic, are we good on time?
Yeah, because I'm not seeing Blake joining, and really, you guys,
Okay.
like, people are really enjoying the convo, and I'm dropping the link, so keep talking. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So obviously, like, I teach, not obviously, you guys don't know that, but I work at SAE, the audio school. I work at the campus here in Miami, and that's where I met Maria, and that's actually how I met Loic. And I've been talking to our students, and I've been telling them this story because this situation that we're currently in is very reminiscent to me of what happened after 9/11. After 9/11, things kind of stopped. People stopped going to the movies. People stopped buying music. Whenever we have like a big kind of event like this, where people are unsure of what's going to happen, people stop spending money on stuff that's like feels like extra, like going to the movies or buying music or whatever, because they're not sure what's going to happen. So they want to hold on to their money. I saw the music industry in Miami go from like booming, like I was having an amazing year, to all of a sudden there were no more sessions. And it was disheartening. And one of the things that I've been telling the kids is like, I made a decision to pivot. I was like, look, this isn't going the exact way that I wanted to, so let me make an adjustment. And I actually took a pay cut, and I took a demotion, and I became an assistant again. After I had been engineering and recording and making awesome money, I demoted myself to assistant, and I went around to a couple of studios and said, hey, do you need an assistant? And because I decided to do that, I was able to meet producers, artists that would then go on to form relationships that would then, when things started to come back around, I was a person that they called, and I was able to develop relationships and build business off of that by not sitting at home and, sulking or feeling bad. And like, obviously it's inevitable. There are days you're going to wake up and you're going to feel bad. But you can do something about that. You can get up, you can call people, you can come on things like this and have conversations and meet people and say, hey, I do this. Like, don't stop building your networks. Don't stop trying to be better at what you do. Don't stop practicing. Like, this will pass. And if you're ready for the next step, once it passes, you'll be in a better position when that happens. So that's what I want to say about that. Everything, I'm trying to move on as normal as possible. I'm still working. I'm mixing a bunch of songs, and I'm mixing them on headphones in my house, thanks to SonarWorks. Ding.
Cool. Wrap up on this. Thank you so much, Frank and Maria, again, for being super like on top of asking all those questions on behalf of the community and the people online. We have Blake Angelos from Yamaha. He's going to do a quick demo of and actually, we're going to do a different thing here because I think he has a multi-camera angle. Blake, is that true? All right, you're on mute. We can hear you.
That is true. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Hi, Blake.
Hello.
Blake is a professional keyboardist, musician. He's played for 30 years. I mean, I don't want to count the years. So are you able to, we have a special setup here, but are you able to show us your screens?
Yeah, if I just need to be able to share it. Where's the share?
I love your t-shirt, by the way, sweater.
How is that? Is it sharing it?
Yes. So people, stick around with us, because we have 2 final giveaways. We're going to ask everybody for your opinion I'm basically, after Blake is done, he's going to do a brief demo for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and we're going to give away 2 more copies of SonarWorks, and we'll be done for the day. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting all your feedback. And
So am I sharing the main screen here that has the 3?
We see the montage screen, we see
Good.
you, and we see the keyboard.
Okay, and you can hear.
Here.
And hopefully it sounds good because I missed a sound check. I don't know how.
I think you sound so great, and I think if it's not even 12 o'clock for me, I'm going to get a cocktail and just listen to you play.
Okay, good. All right. So, hi, this is Blake. There's my camera there. As you can see, I have the montage in front of me. Basically, I think what I want to go through here is the concept of what this instrument is, and then I'll play some sounds. Basically, what you see in front of you is, you know, the screen right here. I have an output so I can select different things in the screen, and it will appear, so you'll get an idea of how to navigate. There's this main performance home button, and performance is the only mode that's in Montage and Modi X. Just as a side note, the Modi X music synthesizer uses the same basic engine, so they are voice compatible. There's definitely some differences as far as hardware, as far as action, as far as features and stuff between the two. But the coolest thing is that where it really counts is it is compatible with all the performances. So you can, everything you hear here, you can get on a Modi X as well. So we have basically some stuff that you can see here, the main performance screen. If I touch right next to it, this is called a live set. Live set is a collection of performances, and I've created a few here that for Music Expo. One of them is kind of more realistic sounds, which I'll play some of those in a second. The other page here, I have synthesizers, and I'm going to probably start with that one that's up here that's called Single Element Saw, to give you an idea of what the voice architecture or the performance architecture is, what this instrument is. So what I did here is I just created this this basic 1 element, which is just basically an oscillator sound here to take you through sort of the architecture of the instrument. So again, live set is where I select up to 16 sounds. Now when I have selected the sound like this one, I can go back over here just to the main performance screen that you see in front of you. So what this is you see on the screen, I'm pointing at my screen here, but right across here, the parts, and I can select the parts with a button over here, or I can select them in the touch screen. And a performance you can play up to 8 parts simultaneously. So I'm going to start at the very basic single part level here and select this guy, and I'm going to drop into edit mode so you can see what this looks like. So this is my main part screen here, and I have a single element right here that's it. Now I have up to 8 elements per part. And remember, if we go back to the main performance screen, that's 1 element of which I have 8 per part, and I haven't even used up the 8 other additional parts. I'll play some multi-part performances later on, but I just kind of wanted to give an idea of what this is, of what this instrument is, and why it's so cool. So I'm going to drop back in here to my part edit here, and I'll just show you at the single element level, which is what I've selected here. I have a single filter. Now, 1 element can have all of these different things here. There's your oscillator. That's where it's selecting across here at the very top that it's using a sawtooth waveform. Pitch, EG, filter. You have up to 18 different filter types here that you can easily select right here. I chose this analog filter, the low pass 24 dB, so it's a 4-pole low pass filter. Amplitude envelope, element LFO, and an element EQ. So with this element, I have control over here with these control knobs. I also have the super knob, and I'll talk about that in a second. This is a macro controller that basically can control up to 8 assignable knobs. But you hear right here, here's my filter, right? So I can adjust filter and stuff like that right here. Now let's say what I'd like to do is maybe go to my LFOs here. And we have a new thing. Montage and Modi X are both platform-based synthesizers. So what that means is that we have pretty cool updates that happen on a fairly regular basis. And the last one that we added was called OS version 3. That one added some cool effects, this new extended LFO, which is pretty cool, which I'll kind of show. And I'll show you how you assign things to control, and I'll show you what can be assigned to this super knob here at this level here, so you get an idea what's happening. So with OS 3.0, we added element LFO, we added the VCM mini filter, which is a virtual circuitry modeling, which is our modeling technology of a very famous filter that says mini in it. How's that? That'll give you an idea. We also added a thing called a wave folder, which is a very cool effect, which I'll play some examples here in a second, and so on. But let's say I want to add this extended LFO, and I want to add it to something like, say, pitch modulation, right? So the extended LFO basically takes a low frequency oscillator, which is generally kind of gives you modulation. So it's low frequency, it's below hearing range, and it modulates. And that's how you get vibrato and stuff when you assign it to something like pitch. Well, with the extended LFO, it goes well beyond that. So you can get some pretty cool, interesting kind of granulated sounds in here. Now, if you notice, when I select this parameter here, that light here, this control assign light comes on. And this is where the whole motion control thing opens up. If I want to assign that to the super knob, I just select the parameter I want to assign here and touch control assign, and montage screen changes and says, where do you want to assign it? To any control. It could be something like over here with the ribbon controller or the mod controller and so on. Well, I'll just do the super knob right now. And what that does is it actually assigns it to an assignable knob that is then set to the super knob. So now I have control over that assignable or over the speed of the LFO. If I turn it all the way down, so that's one control for that part. You have up to 16 control destinations per part. So it's pretty powerful what you can do with this. If I go just to the common level here and to the control, you can see this is what it's been assigned to. Super knob is here, and then element LFO speed is right here. Now I also have different things like how this movement, the super knob moves here. Right now it's just a standard linear curve. It's faster and slower. But I have some other cool ones in here too, and then I can create my own as well. So let's say I wanted to do something maybe with a dog leg curve. So now what's going to happen is it will speed up and slow down, and then I can adjust kind of how that works, how that single parameter works here. So you'll hear it speed up, and then as it gets to the top of the super knob, it'll go the other direction. Now, just to give you an idea of what can be assigned to any of these physical controls, I'll go ahead and touch this destination. And you can see this is the element level. So this is the lowest kind of the base level of the instrument. And you have things like element LFO speed, pitch modulation depth, cutoff frequency and resonance filter, and so on. I can also go up to part parameters, and I can assign any of these. But then this instrument also has 2 insertion effects per part. I can assign up to 24 of those parameters of any insertion effect. In this case, I have the VCM mini filter set there, but and the other one is the wave folder, but you can see all the things that you can assign and all of the ways that things can be assigned. So as one thing opens, another thing can close. Multiple things can happen simultaneously. So that's just, I wanted to start here with the very basic thing. And now what I want to do is go and kind of check out what this instrument sounds like from, different synth sounds. So I'll grab a few synth sounds here. This one is another single element, but this one's kind of been tweaked out already. This one's the programmers have gone in and done some really cool things just with this single element. Same thing I had before, but with a little bit more. So this here, I'm in my live set. And the cool thing about the live set here is that I can give myself little notes. So what you just heard there is a single element pad with the extended LFO assigned to the super knob. So just a cool pad sound. Now I just moved from one sound to another. I want to point out another cool thing. We have a thing called seamless sound switching. So I just change sounds. This is the VCM mini filter that's assigned to the sub bass sound. But you notice it didn't cut off the previous sound. So if I go back to the ambient synth pad, and I go over to the mini sub, so that kind of stuff that you can do in a very real live performance situation, just it doesn't cut off the previous sound. That is cool. I'm going to move forward here because I know I don't have a lot of time, but I want to just play some sounds that just use the other engine in here. So there's two engines. There's a AWM, which is a sample-based engine, and then there's an FMX engine. And I have some stuff here. This is from actually Easy Sounds. This is a company, easysounds.eu. They're a sound design company in Germany. And this is my friend who did this really cool sound called Equanda that's all FM synthesis. So I love this one because it kind of shows. I'll touch this. See how many parts. So this is 8 full parts, and they're all FM parts. And you notice that as the super knob in this one moves, as certain things move in and out, other things appear and disappear as I turn the super knob up. And then this one actually has a cool effect at the very top where it has this very now I still have all this knob controls over here, so if I wanted to maybe sweep the filter, right now I'm sweeping all the parts. But let's say what I want to do is solo one of the parts here, like the bass sound. Now that I selected that part, the only part that's going to change is just the bass and the filter. So individual parts can be controlled, or if I go to the top of the performance, I'm controlling all parts simultaneously. So another thing I love about the FM engine is that if you like drum kind of parts, so this is a 4-part performance where each of the parts has an FMX part assigned to it. There's a kick drum. Now look at the top. These are the assignable knobs here. And you notice that as I change parts, each of the control, and I'm soloing each of the parts here, has different controls set up per part. So let's say I want to check out the drum here, and I just want to do some cool things to change the body of the kick drum. Maybe the frequency. Okay, let's say I like that one, so I go next to the. Okay, now you see those knobs changed as I changed parts here. So I can do some cool. Go back to the actual drum groove here. So you have these cool kind of things that you can do just as a drum synthesizer with Montage. So let me go back one level here, and I'm going to select some of the more realistic sounds, because that's another really important aspect, and I think a lot of people really love this instrument because of the realistic sounds. Hold on, there's a Labrador Retriever that wants to say hi. Anyway. So this is the CFX Concert Grand. Now the super knob, again, it's a macro control. So each of the performances that you have in Montage can be programmed for, different types of things. For a synthesizer thing, you can control effects, you can control filters and stuff like that. For a piano, you can do some neat things with both reverb and EQ that gives you this idea of proximity effect. So with the super knob in this position, all the way to the left, I'm in player perspective. So I'm right in front of this 9-foot concert grand. You can hear. But you see, it's a nice resonant piano but you're in player positions. I turned this up. Now I've moved myself about 20 feet away from the piano. So not only is there reverb, but you'll notice that the low frequency kind of dissipates. Like you'd expect as you pull away from the source, the low frequency isn't as present. And the mids too. That's close. Now all the way to the back. So it's kind of a moody, far away piano. I'm going to switch over to another piano here. This is the Bosendorfer. We have a Bosendorfer library that you can download for free. There's about 1.75 gigabytes of flash memory in Montage. There's about 1 gigabyte in Mode EX, but you can load this really nice, beautiful Bosendorfer Imperial 290 piano. Totally different piano sound, but we still have the proximity effect assigned to the super knob. And I'll play. Here's the CFX again. Now I'll switch over to the Imperial. This is a totally different piano. So a little bit, a little brighter attack, but it also has a lot more resonance to it too. Another thing that you can do with a piano sound, for example, this ambient trailer sound. I love this sound because now you notice I can move the super knob. I have an FC7 that's plugged into the back, so I don't have to constantly move my hand up to move the super knob. I can control it with the foot. And with this one, I actually sold a Montage to a guy that does a lot of soundtrack composition in LA, and he was working on a sci-fi thing, and he was telling me, he uses Pro Tools. He's got tons and tons and tons and tons of instrument plugins. He's a keyboardist. And the one thing that was really kind of a drag for him was trying to find a sound. A lot of times when using plugins and stuff, there's great sounds in virtual instruments, no question, but to pull up something that you can interact with quickly and not have to assign things, this particular sound was exactly the sound that he was looking for. And what this does is it's very affected. But as I turn up the super knob, you hear it move in more of the effects assigned, and you get this cool pad sound. As I go all the way to the top, what happens is the dry signal has been pulled all the way out, and all I get is the affected signal. So it's this cool pad sound that you can play around with. So he was writing something that was like this sci-fi love scene thing, and he wanted this tender sort of sound. So and then all the way up. Pull it back a little bit. All the way to the top. So that kind of stuff. And the great thing about Montage too is that this is also a multi-channel audio interface. So as soon as I want to record this, I can, via USB, I can record directly into whatever DAW I'm using. In fact, you can even control the DAW, because if I touch remote, just to give you an idea, this is the remote control interface for Montage. Mode EX doesn't have this currently, but this is one of the things that you get when you get Montage. So you have your track control. So when I have it in this mode, all of the controls on Montage now control tracks, mutes, volume control, all across there. Plugin is what I have where I can assign it to control any virtual instrument. So you can go into your learn on whatever DAW that you use and assign any of the physical controls in this mode to control whatever plugin you have, so you can customize it that way. I'll go over to settings so you can see exactly what we're talking about. Montage comes with Cubase AI, which is on version 10 right now, which is very cool. But if you're not a Cubase user, you're a Logic user, you're a Pro Tools user, you're a Ableton Live user, you can assign it to that as well by just changing the the setup here, and then you just in your DAW tell it where it's getting control. So for a computer-based environment, like I know a lot of people at Music Expo, use different DAWs. This is a great front end, and it's a different way to work, especially coming at it if you're a keyboardist. It's nice to be able to have great sounds in front of you and a real instrument in front of you, but then you can also immediately go into the DAW world quickly and interact that way as well. So with Ambient Trailer, I can immediately record that into whatever DAW that I use. I'll show you a couple other things in here. I'm going to grab this drum groove here. That's just it's actually just a trap kit. But one of the things that we added in the new version of Montage is a very cool pattern-based sequencer. So if I touch play record, we have different ways to record. MIDI just is a very quick, I'm going to go through one pass, record, done. No real editing, just real fast recording. So if you have an idea, you're playing the piano, hit record, you can just record it, save it as a MIDI file, and so on. Audio, I can record directly to a USB device and record a stereo track directly to that if I just want to record a quick audio file and then move that into the DAW later on. And then the last thing is this new pattern-based recorder. And this is cool because it allows you to create a groove quickly. And once you're in record, you can just move from track to track and not have to interrupt the recording process. So I'll do that real quick here. First thing I want to do is go to my tempo. If I can dial in my tempo here, or I can go right over here to the tempo icon at the top of the screen. And if I want to tap it in, if I want to listen to what the click sounds like, I'll put it on always so I know where my groove is. Okay. So I have it set here at the tempo I want here. I'm going to hit the record button here, and I'm just going to record 4 measures. I'm going to turn on recording quantize to make this really simple, so it'll just record to the nearest 16th note. Find my my grooves here. Now, I'm in the record. If I touch the record button and it blinks like this, that means I'm in record rehearse mode. So I'm not recording anything yet. I'm just selecting sounds. So I have these kind of cool kick drums in here. So we're coming around to the top. Now I'm in record mode. 3, 4. Okay, now I've dropped back out of record, but I'm still in record, but I'm not recording. I'm in rehearse mode because I want to find whatever. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I have a drum groove here. What I can do at this point is I can just switch tracks that I'm in here. I'm still in record rehearse mode, but I have a bass here. Okay, drop into record. Next track, keys. So now I have a drum, I have a little groove here, right? Didn't have to drop out of record mode, which is cool. The last thing I want to show you in here is one of the cool things I love about this sequencer is this thing called play effects. What play effects allow you to do is do non-destructive quantizing, and then I can edit them in real time. So let's say I have this set up where I recorded everything in a 16th note, but now I want to check out some different maybe swing grooves in here. So I'm going to go over here to press the solo button and just solo the drum track. Maybe swing it a little bit. Change the velocity of the swung note. Same thing here, swing this one. Change the velocity of the swung note where it's harder velocity on the swung note only, or if I go all the way to 0, it's just eighth notes here. So you can have a little bit of attitude added to your tracks here in real time. So that's kind of a little swinging thing. But again, that's just something that we added in OS version 3. The main point here, cool pattern sequencer. I have up to 8 different scenes is what we call them. So these are basically pattern sections, intro, verse, chorus, and so on that I can add to this. And then when I'm ready, I can move it over. We have actually a cool VST plugin that's called Montage Connect that I can drag and drop songs over into something like Cubase or whatever and continue doing my recording from that point as well. So let's see, how much time do I have, Loic?
We're over time.
Okay.
But this was really cool, and I think
I knew it would be like that. There's a lot of stuff I can show.
Yeah, so, but okay, but stay here. Just one question. You could be starting live streaming soon.
Yes, if you go to Yamaha Synths, so Yamaha Synths on YouTube, we're going to start doing live streaming kind of seminars. Basically, I think we're looking at like in the afternoon, my time. I'll be doing a little short seminar, and I'll take questions in the chat on YouTube. And then Hans-Peter Hinkel will be doing it in Europe at his time over there. So we'll have kind of the same topics. He'll do it in German over there. I'll do it in English for everywhere else. And so that's happening, YamahaSynths.com, and then YamahaSynth.com is where you can find out more about Montage as well.
Yes. So I dropped this as well, .com. I dropped that in the chat so everybody has it. Blake, I really appreciate. So,
yeah, no problem.
Rush, but I want to do this again.
Sure.
And maybe have you start at the beginning, because actually composing on the keyboard and so on is a good way to start things in the process before you get into the DAW. We're going to quickly wrap up the show. I have 5 things to say. The first thing is, for those who are still around, please take a second and answer the poll that's popping up on your screen right now. We really have 2 questions, so we're going to do 30 seconds per question. The first one is, would love to hear from you how you would recommend this live stream to a friend, 1 being most unlikely and 10 being most likely. Would love to hear from you. And the second question that you will see is what type of panels you would like to see in the future. You know, what type of content you will see. You can pick up to 3. Please don't pick more than that, but feel. And if you have anything that you would like us to see, to offer either at a live event, or if you would like us to do another live stream, if you like this live stream and if you want us to do anything in particular, please drop in the chat here, because we'll keep an eye. So if there's a particular, if you want basically Frank or Greg or Blake or Il Factor to come back and explain more, please let us know. Maria is an incredible audio engineer, and she gave us the privilege today to moderate the panels, and I think she's done an amazing job. But she is also an amazing instructor, and I hope we're going to have a pleasure to, if you want her to actually present, please let us know, drop a note, because I'm sure she would love. I'm not putting pressure on you, Maria, but I'm sure you would love to do this again. Webinar about Logic 10. That's great to ask. It would be great to hear more from Maria. All right. Right on, Tim. But yeah, and also I want to let you know that, you know, we had to postpone our Miami show, but we will be back in Miami probably in March next year. We will be in Nashville in September. We'll be back in San Francisco in November. So stick around, you know. Great. Yeah. Drop. Yeah. Maria, I think we're on.
Happening.
This is happening. Well, then, is it happening, Maria?
It is happening.
All right. So we'll get Maria. So stick around. I want to thank Yamaha, and Blake is the representative, but Yamaha, Steinberg, and Greg who presented today, and Sonarworks for supporting today's live stream. This was a total experiment for us, and I hope we did well. But it was really our first time. We were all nervous. I was very nervous, which actually was a good thing. Every night before Music Expo, I lose sleep, and it was the case last night, which is crazy. But I want to thank everybody. Of course, a big thank to Frank, Maria, Greg, Blake, Jared, and Il Factor for presenting. So virtual clap for everybody here. I hope you can clap on your side or type clap here. Yeah, thank you, Diego. And now, thank you for everyone for joining us and for sticking around for almost 3 hours. This is amazing. So yeah, looking for feedback. If you want to email us, info@musicexpo.co. Also, you all became members, and we recorded this live stream. So as a member, you will be able to watch this live stream as much as you want. Also, there's an opportunity. You can create a profile. As a member, you have created a profile. We can connect people. This is what we're trying to bring, the spirit of Music Expo in today's environment, which is all digital. I love that we have Zio saying I hope it's thank you in Hebrew. Thank you, man. Okay, so now I want to pass it to Anna, who's going to award the last 2 copies of Sonarworks to people who've been with us all the morning, afternoon, or evening.
Hi, everyone. So yes, thank you so much for being with us this morning. It was fun. I learned a lot. And I just want to say thank you to Ruby Mountain. You've been a great participant. You've been with us this whole time. Thank you for your questions. And you are one of our winners. And the second and last license I'm going to give to Annie. Annie, you've also been with us this whole time. So thank you very much. I appreciate your input. And so just to sum it up, our winners are Kevin from early this morning, and then Sam Weiss. We have Kashal, Ruby Mountain, and Annie. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everybody. Congrats. And look, everybody's a winner because I'm sure you learned a lot of things today. We're going to share the links, to the Steinberg package that's available for free. The Shadow Hill plugin apparently is on sale. Make sure to sign up for Beta Academy so you hear more from Il Factor. Tune in into the Yamaha Synth YouTube channel where you can see Blake do more demos. And I want to thank everybody for being with us today. And I have only one recommendation for you: make music. Okay? Take care, everyone. Bye.